this, please take as much out of it as you can. My name's Johanna Bogle. I'm the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at Great Western Hospitals in Swindon, and I'm also the Chair of the National Health and Wellbeing Network. Essentially, that means that we gather all of the regional health and wellbeing representatives quarterly to share best practice, hear what's going on in the regions, and start thinking about other events that we can share with you. So if anybody sees anything today and they think that that's something they want to get involved with, please do register as a health and wellbeing network person, come along to your regional events and let us know if you want to get involved in the national groups as well. There's something for everybody, hopefully, and if there's anything missing that you think we aren't doing that we should be, then just drop a line to us and let us know. I'm just going to do a really brief overview of health and wellbeing as we've had it for the last year. So if we can move on one slide, please, Tasha. So we're growing our health and wellbeing champions every year. We're now at 525, which is fantastic. There's a breakdown on the screen of the different regions. Clearly leading the way are the Northwest, but there has been an uptick in all of that regional engagement for this year. So thank you to everybody who's getting involved in that. Next slide, please. Over the last year, so we've had, as I said, this is our third Health and Wellbeing Conference. We do events monthly. There are lots and lots of events registered on the One NHS Finance website. There are lots of resources available if you want to start things in your own organisations, and we try and do lots of sharing of best practice. So there's lots of initiatives being showcased from finance departments around the country, and all we are trying to do is to promote physical and mental health and wellbeing among NHS Finance and admin staff. On the next slide are examples of some of the things that you can have a look at on the One NHS Finance website. So like I said, there's resources as well as open invitations to events. So please take a look at that if you get an opportunity. Just looking forward then to the next few months on the next slide, you can see these are our big ticket items that are happening. We are getting a lot of uptake now, which is fantastic. So there are only a few spaces left on some of those events, but all of them are available via the internet to log on if you're interested. The next slide shows our webinars that we've got coming up. So you can see we've got things happening from after annual accounts have gone in through to this time next year, essentially. So some really exciting things happening that you can do on Teams and not need to travel for as well. And finally, last slide shows the different ways that we are trying to support our staff. So there are mock interview schemes, there are flexible working and hybrid working showcases, and how to really thrive and survive in financial recovery, as we're all under the cosh at the moment with the financial position of the NHS. There is also a staff survey 2024 results tool, again, trying to learn from those teams that are doing really, really well so that we can try and replicate the things that they've done that have worked for them in our own organisations. Okay, so moving on to today. We've got lots of different presentations, lots of different NHS organisations. Thank you to all of our speakers in advance. If when you're very welcome to ask any questions you like, but if you could please put your cameras on so that anybody with a hearing impediment can lip read you. We will also have it's also being recorded, so you should be able to see the text coming up as well. If you've got any questions, then put your hands up, or you can put it into the chat box and we'll try and keep on top of all of the queries coming in. Please, can you ensure that you've got your microphone on mute unless you're talking? And I think it's already been answered in the chat, but we are trying to record this whole session with the exception of the final interactive breakout room session. So it will be available on YouTube in the next couple of weeks. Right, we're going to move on to our first speaker now then. So this is going to be Vicky Argyle. Thank you so much for stepping in at last minute for Kathy, who's poorly. Vicky's going to talk to us about how Lincolnshire ICB has transformed from 4 separate health and wellbeing offers into just the one. So thank you, thank you, Vicky, and I'm going to go on mute now until the end of that presentation. Over to you.
Hello, yes, thank you, Joanna. Just going to talk through us as a ICS system, so Lincolnshire system. Nice to meet you. So I'm Vicky Argyle and I work for Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. So I'm one of the health and wellbeing champions at our organisation. Yes, I'm going to talk about how our Lincolnshire ICB, how we've gone from 4 separate health and wellbeing, and we've done a collaborative approach. So we've kind of joined together to try and work together to improve our health and wellbeing offer within Lincolnshire. So I'll go through what we've done so far, what we're planning to do, and the benefits that we've seen so far. So if I just go through our system as a general, so our structure. So within the Lincolnshire system, we've got one ICB, and then we've got a community health, we've got a community trust, Lincoln Teaching Hospitals, and then Lincolnshire Partnership, which is mental health trust. So ULHT and Lincolnshire Community Health Services are in a group model now as well. So we're all at different sizes, all at different maturity levels. So we've all the ICB joined to be one organisation in 2019, I think now. But we all are quite fortunate that we've all got a health and wellbeing champion within each of our organisations. So we've all got someone within our system that's trying to promote health and wellbeing. Obviously, we're all at different sizes as well. So our hospital organisation is the largest one. So we've got thousands of staff who work there, ranging to the mental health trust, which is ours, which is a lot smaller. But we've all got the same goal of trying to improve our wellbeing offer within the finance team within Lincolnshire. So if we go into the next one, so we all kind of thought, seeing as though there's 4 of us in all of the organisations, it might be good to see what we're all doing, especially as we're all finance staff, see what we're all doing. So we all started off by meeting in the summer last year, and we all did an audit of what we already offer. So we used the NHS Health and Wellbeing Framework as a starting point. So this is kind of splitting wellbeing into 7 sections to look at it from all them different elements, so relationships, data, insight, environment. So how do we have what do we offer as within our teams, which is supporting each of them areas? So for example, the relationship ones, we do one-to-ones and appraisals, we have FFS leads, we do training, the data insights, so there's the staff surveys and any surveys that we do within the finance organisation. So we all kind of took that away to look within all of our 4 teams what we have to offer. So we did that, and that was kind of our review. So we took that away and then we all came back together. If we go on to the next slide, please, Natasha. Thank you. So we looked at all of the areas. We noticed that there were some similarities between what we was doing. So for example, majority of the people had breakout rooms, did the hybrid working offer. So we all majority of us had that, but then there was elements where we kind of saw that there was bits for improvement, or we could kind of pinch with pride. So we kind of looked at each other's areas and saw what could we do that might be quick wins that we could do together, or ones that we could improve on as a whole. So for example, the teaching trust, they already had a study group for each of the different people who were studying together. So the ICB have also set up one, and we've all tried to take that to do our own study groups, but also then have an environment where everyone who's studying for each particular area. So that's kind of one that we're working on to together at the moment is like, so who's studying for ACCA, who's doing their AAT qualification, they can like kind of have a group as a system, especially with the organisations such as the ICB and us. We're quite small organisations, so having a network that you can lean into to support each other as a system, that's where it might work quite well. So we kind of looked together and came up with a plan for what we could do to improve elements as a system. So this is kind of a broad work plan of what we came up with, which we are now using as a guide to kind of help us, support us with the wellbeing offer and improving it as a system. So we've got like a detailed work plan behind that, but that's kind of the key areas that we thought as a starting point to look at, and like achievable timeframes for it all as well. So what have we done already? So if we go on the next slide. So as a system already, so we now already have a mental health first aider in all of our organisations. So everyone's been trained in that approach, which is really good. So everyone can have so we've got a mental first aider in each of the organisations. So we've had that training in order to support everyone. But also the benefit of having it for each organisation as well is that we've promoted that within the system. So sometimes it's quite difficult to talk to someone who's, especially in a smaller organisation, that you're not like too familiar with. So having one in each of the systems means that anyone from finance can go to anyone and have that support through different areas. Also, so the You've Been Mugged, so this is kind of a celebrating success element of it. So this was a pinch of pride moment. So the ICB, they do this where every month someone gets recognised for just anything that they're doing. Anyone who's done anything, any initiatives or any outstanding work, then that's filled with like a little treat or something, and then it's passed on to someone for to kind of show appreciation for what they're doing. So we've actually implemented that within LPFT as well. So it's just a celebrating success element that kind of shows a little bit of appreciation for people. So we've done that. So we've done system finance team away days. So we had our first system-wide away day in the summer last year. So that was where all of the finance staff for everyone within the system met up together and had like a networking day. We learned more about each other and had different focuses. So that's kind of now a 6-month thing. So we had one in the summer, and then which was a face-to-face event, and then one online in the winter. So that we were able to introduce ourselves. So as the Wellbeing Champions, we did a presentation there as well. So we used that as like an introductory to ourselves and kind of promote the wellbeing that we're doing and the offer that we've got. So we've also got like a newsletter. So the ULHT, so the hospital trust, do a newsletter every month about any offer that we've got, like promoting, like there's shine a spotlight on different teams, a little bit of fun on there. So they did like a guess the dogs, whose dog it was for each of the elements as well, but also like highlighting different wellbeing offers that we did. So anything that's coming up, any events that are available to anyone within the system, we could put that in there. So we're looking at rolling that out quarterly as a system approach as well, to try and see how we can integrate that with everyone. We also have health and wellbeing as a standing item within like monthly team meetings, so that that can be there as a focus. So as I mentioned, the study groups. So we've done it where like not all organisations had a study group to start with, but we've started to implement that, so everyone does have one. And then we also have a focused one this is for us working on at the moment, is to implement the individual accreditations to do a study group for there. So we're looking at doing that. There's also, so the ICB, they have it where they have guest speakers as well. So you can kind of hear how someone's gone up on their career from someone within the organisation. So you can kind of have that motivation and see everyone's taken different paths on how they've got to where they have. So it's a good way to kind of share that as well. And we're also looking at areas where people can physically study as well, because the hospital have specific areas that people can go to. So looking at, as a system, is there anywhere that we can offer to do study groups specifically for people? Yeah, other things, so social events. So we do them like individually at the moment, but we're looking at doing that together as well. One of the things is, so the ICB, someone there did a Christmas quiz, which was circulated around us all so that we could all kind of join in on that element of it, as well as we did a donation collection for the Lincolnshire YMCA, which were doing hampers for people in need in Lincolnshire. So we did that as a system as well. So that worked really well. Yeah, and then the ICB also did a bake off as well, which they did like the Star Baker element of it, obviously from the Great British Bake Off. And then yeah, so signposting, and we've also got like Teams channels. So we've all implemented a Teams channel where we can put any signposting for anything that's happening, or any support that people's got, can go through there, and also physical boards in people's offices as well. And then in the future, yeah, so obviously there's a few things we've done it as initial start, but there's a lot of benefits that we're finding at the moment that we can start to implement. So some of the benefits is, yeah, so we now meet on a monthly basis. So it's provided new friendships, we've got support. Obviously it can be quite hard putting that, always promoting the wellbeing element of it. So having that support with us all is really useful. And also showing consistency and collaborative. So there's the inequalities in what we were offering, we can kind of look at that and ensure that we all have a consistent message, and everyone can have access to what is available within the system. So we've got the 4 mental health first aiders. So yeah, we can support each other. Anyone can go to anyone's organisation. So I think that's quite a key and good support mechanism there. We can share ideas and best practice. Like, yeah, obviously four heads is better than one. We can all meet together, come up with ideas, and also yeah, you get the benefits of doing it. It takes a shorter amount of time as well. For it's easier to do it all in one rollout as a system as opposed to 4 individual ones together. Recruitment and retention, so this is one of them. So as we have the events as a system, you're getting to know more people, getting to understand different people's organisations. So we do have quite a lot of people who move around within the system. So we think that that's kind of a good way, so you can see each other and keep with the retention of staff. Relationship building, yeah, you can understand each other's environments. Yeah, any issues, so we can understand what any issues we've got and kind of tackle them together as well. Yeah, increased understanding of shared goals, a larger audience, so we can see more engagement and participation, and yeah, reach the message. Also the governance element of it, so we can, any changes, we are looking at putting the appraisals, so health and wellbeing within appraisals, so we can go through that as like a system governance element of it, through implementing that as well. yeah, so that's kind of an overview of like what we've done so far. We've still got quite a lot we do want to do, but we think we've made quite a good start at it, and like the network has been really useful for all of us. And we've since had more wellbeing champions join as well, which is like really good, and we can share the ideas and share the roles around a bit more as well. So yeah, thank you for listening, and that's it from me.
Thanks, Vicky. That's a really great overview of what you're doing in your area. I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm just going to kick off with one to start. What would be your one piece of advice to an organisation or a system thinking of starting up with this system-wide health and wellbeing group?
I'd say just having just getting talking and like arranging to meet up together is really crucial, because like us even having them monthly meetings and doing that audit, I think that audit was really useful because we got to see, and we got quite a lot of quick wins from there, but also had like a steer and guidance to how we wanted to like progress and what we wanted to do going forward. So yeah, just actually like physically meeting up and having the monthly check-ins, as well as an audit of review of what's happening, because I feel like a lot of us were doing things already, so it's not necessarily coming up with something new, but like the steal with pride element of it, like we can all utilize that a bit more, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And plus you get that economies of scale, don't you, when you're talking about your study groups across multiple organizations rather than one. That's got to help. Okay, we've
Yeah,
got
definitely.
a few questions. Joe, do you want to go first, please?
Yeah, it wasn't something that you mentioned as such, but I was just interested to know how the teams, how they currently work, whether you're doing a lot of hybrid working, whether you think that is having an impact in terms of relationships, the thing you think about relationship building.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so we all kind of work kind of differently with that element as well. So we did see differences within us. So from our perspective at LPFT, I'd say a lot of people are working from home. So that home working, with going into the office a bit more now, definitely has impacted on relationships. I think like one of the things we've done is like we've done a Friday catch up. So like at 3:30 on a Friday, it's just an open call where no one can, like it's no work conversations, but just to give people that catch up and that takeaway for the weekend to see which you wouldn't necessarily get in the office, which you would naturally get in the office. But obviously, if you're not working like that, that seems to be something that we've got that's really helped with that element of it, as well as like check-ins in the week. So we've got like 10 o'clock work calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah, I suppose they're little elements that we've implemented, which have been quite good.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Joe. Holly, good morning.
Morning. Hi, Vicky. That was a great presentation. Thank you. I was interested in how you pitch the various elements that you talked through. So Bake Off and the rewards and the sort of catch-up meetings that you've mentioned. Do you pitch it as this is part of well-being, therefore we're going to have a Bake Off competition, or do you just naturally let it happen and then the aim is well-being, but you don't necessarily pitch it that way?
Yeah, good question, Holly. So the Bake Off was the ICB, so they're the ones that did that. So I don't really know that element of it. But we have, so yeah, so well-being is a part of the agenda every month on our monthly meetings as a team. So any ideas we kind of put through there as like a suggestion. So for the hampers that we did, that was kind of a way of opening it up there to see if people do it, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose we kind of use that forum as a main element for seeing what ideas people want to do or not. But yeah, it's all on a voluntary basis. So if people, we do get a lot more uptake in some things than others, but it's always there as an option.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Hi, Georgina.
Hello, you're right. just wanted to ask about how this fits in with your wider organisational development plans and learning and development and other sort of training, particularly regarding finance qualifications, and whether you do that as individual organisations or across the system.
So yeah, so currently it's just as our organisations. So that is kind of something. So that's like in our long-term goal is like apprentices within the system. So there's like a rotation bit, but currently we are still just within our organisation elements of the training bits. But that's definitely one we're wanting to look at, Georgina, to do that as like a system.
I asked mainly because we're at Devon ICB, we're working up, or HR are working up an OD plan and strategy, etc. And I just sometimes feel a little bit like, I want to use the word overwhelmed, but maybe I shouldn't, but where it's like, whoa, how does it all fit out in? And we have a staff partnership forum, which is staff led rather than trade union led. And again, it's how all of these things fit in, because they kind of all overlap a lot, and it's just trying to kind of not try and solve everything, but yeah, so how, yeah, kind of not feel like you have to do everything at once, I guess. So it's sort of, I guess it's feeding in from the health and wellbeing system work into those individual organisational groups and things, or HR or OD work, isn't it? But you see what I mean? It could almost feel like you want to do everything as part of one big thing, doesn't it? But then it becomes too probably much. But they all interlink so much, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we've all actually looked at our organisation, so what we're doing as an organisation as well.
Locally,
so we're all part of our own organisation networks as well.
To feed it back in that way.
Yeah. So we've got kind of both angles of it.
Cool. And sorry, one more quick question. Do you have specific time allocated in your role for it? Again, we don't generally, but we do for our staff partnership chair. So I just wondered if you do.
Yeah, no, we don't. This is over. So we do like a half an hour slot every month just to do an update of it. But yeah, this is kind of above and beyond our
over and
role
above.
at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Lorraine, hi, do you want to ask your question?
Morning. Yes, hi. Thanks for the update. It's really helpful. We've had like a happiest and healthiest group for quite a few years now, and it's petered out a bit. So I just wondered how you keep momentum and our finance community can be a little bit not so sociable, let's say that. And so how do you get people to join in? You know, sometimes it's like tumbleweed in a meeting, let alone get them to join into something jolly. I don't know. I it might not just be my team. Maybe it is. I don't know. But sometimes actually getting them to join in can be. They love a bring and share lunch. They love playing rounders. But some things, you know, just fall foul and they're just not interested. And a quiz. They like a quiz as well. So I'm just wondering how you stir up the engagement really.
Yeah, definitely not just you, Lorraine, because I think we've all had that as like within a system that is kind of a issue as well. Like I suppose, yeah, it's just keep promoting it and doing different, as long as we do like try and come up with different ways of doing things, but also accepting that like it isn't like it's not everyone's cup of tea. Everything is not everyone's cup of tea. But I think having like working as a system, so us all meeting together, I think that is really good because you can that kind of keeps you motivated as well for coming up with new ideas and doing things. So I don't think I've fully helped there, Lorraine, but I think just having the network is really useful. Kind of share that experience and kind of keep that momentum going.
Okay. Just keep plugging away. So we've done some bake-alongs, or cook-alongs, where we share a recipe and the ingredients, and then we cook together. And we often get 2 or 3 people. Sometimes I've had 1, but some people just come and watch. So that was quite nice. But yeah, genuinely, I had to manage my expectations when we started, because I was just thinking, well, why wouldn't they want to do it? But yeah, sometimes it's timing, I think, as well. So do you do anything in the evenings, or is it always in work time? Do you choose lunch times? How do you pitch stuff?
Yeah, I guess we've done stuff in lunchtime, and so we've done like walks in the like a lunch break walk, or like yeah, I guess I don't know, Lorraine. I don't
Bit
know
of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both, to be fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Lorraine.
That's really helpful, Vicky. And
Thanks,
will you
Lorraine.
be sharing slides?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Lorraine, you've hit a nerve there. There's lots of chat coming in agreeing with you. I was just going to add from our perspective. So within the BSW ICB, we do an annual get together of all finance staff face to face, and there is nothing better for generating excitement and kind of enthusiasm for all things health and wellbeing than having people in a room. So even if you feel like you're the only person sometimes, if you get everybody together and have themes through your presentations, I've found that really helps. And often when we have our health and wellbeing champion meetings, there's usually one or two that are experiencing that, and what you need is that reinvigoration of ideas and enthusiasm from everybody else to kind of keep you on the up, because it is a cycle, isn't it? We all go through the really heavy periods of the year within finance, so it's trying to, like you say, time it right. Okay, last question from VG, please, and then we're going to move on.
Oh, hello. Thanks. I just wanted to share my experience and also ask a quick question. So during a recent away day, I brought up a like 15-minute session, which was very welcoming. So I included hand and leg stretch exercise with breathing in sitting and standing posture. So around 40 to 50 people. So we all did it together. And I also did laughing yoga. I took the, information from one NHS Finance. I think it's in the YouTube, by one of the the happiness coach. So that was very welcoming. And we also did like a gratitude exercise. So when they all came in, we asked them, what are the 3 things you're happy, grateful about? So everyone. So what I'm trying to say is, so when a session is like face to face, if it's a big event, everyone is very happy to participate and they all express their happiness. That it was really good. But continuity is a big problem. So no one is, like just like Lorraine mentioned. So I'm from finance as well. So it's very difficult to have a continuous engagement, on a monthly or weekly basis. So what is the best way to have a, activity, for example? Will the staff show interest, or is it something we have to keep emailing, or just having a quick thought on that? If Vicky can advise, how do you continuously keep them engaged? Like it's like they are engaged if it's a one-off big event, but on a regular basis, they're not showing the enthusiasm for well-being.
Yeah, I guess we do. So we do like a Wellbeing Wednesday where there's like any that wellbeing events, etc. that we do. So we put there's like a different focus. So the hospital trust do they do like a Wellbeing Wednesday on what the events are and different things that are focused on every month. For example, they did one on SAD as a element on that. So we share that every month. We circulate that between the system to show what it is that we do. Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah, it's difficult, but just keep promoting, I think, and having that motivation to, us keep having the motivation and keep going with it is probably the main element that we've kind of started with anyway at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Are you going to come in with an answer?
Hi, this might help actually. I've been running some sessions over at York and they've been sort of quite well attended. We're talking 70 to 90 people. And the way we've done it is Andy, who's the finance director, has basically advertised them. We've done 3 a term and we've sort of said, rather than couch it as well-being, I've done it as more performance. So some of the stuff that I've worked with the staff has been used over in North Yorkshire Police by their firearms department. So things like breath work and guided relaxation, so the guys can kind of shoot straight. And the way that that's been packaged really seemed to engage people in the finance area. And I back some of that up with the scientific stats as well. And I did something on loneliness as well and stress, and produced the stats on that to engage people, and I got them to use basically things like their watches to monitor their heart rate so that they could actually see the difference of doing some breathing. So it actually became meaningful for them. So it was actually a measurement, because, you know, within finance, we spend a lot of time measuring things. And if we can see the actual improvements as a result of what we've gone and done, I think that keeps people engaged. So I think the reason we got good attendance was it was driven from the top. He turned up. He said he was nervous about turning up and doing stuff that wasn't in his comfort zone or he'd never tried before. It wasn't marketed or talked about in terms of sort of anxiety or depression. It was aimed more at increasing your performance, you know, managing your mind mentally in meetings. So it had a performance. And the other big thing was the director basically gave everyone half an hour of their work time to attend. So it was on a Friday lunchtime, which was the best uptake because it was quite relaxed. We tried different times during the week. And we found that middle of the week just didn't work for people, but sort of towards the end of the week got the higher figures. And by the director saying, you know, you can have this in work time, this half an hour slot, I think the uptake was higher because they went and had their hour lunch time. But we only did 3 a term, you know, so autumn, winter, spring, summer, that side of things. But that's kind of what we've worked on over at York. But I took some of this from talking to I think it was over in Bradford. They'd set up a similar model that worked really well. So I've as they say, I've stolen with pride from other areas to sort of gain some of this information. So I haven't learnt it all on my own. I don't know whether that helps, but buying from the top team turning up, making it important, allocating the time in work's time to say that this is important, and couching it as a performance. So that can be, you know, improving your performance in the workplace or at home, you know, because stress impacts us anywhere. And I don't know whether that helps, but I just thought I'd jump on given the conversation that we're having.
That's really great advice. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, Vicky, thank you so much for your presentation. That was really good starter for the day. We're going to move on now to Kerry Anders. So Kerry's going to be showcasing how she developed and grew a mini menopause forum for the finance department and how that benefited all staff. So over to you, Kerry. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joanna. Morning, everybody. I'm Kerry Anders. I work for Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust. And I am here today to talk about the menopause forum that we set up in the department. So Natasha, if you want to move to the next slide. So here are just a few facts around the menopause. So menopausal women are the fastest growing demographic in the workforce. Menopause can affect a woman's working life. Sometimes menopausal symptoms or working conditions can impact your ability to concentrate or carry out your role. You know, there is a lot of symptoms associated with the menopause, and all of those things can impact you. You know, less sleep, you can't concentrate as much. There's a multitude of different things. Which leads on to the next one. So in a survey of 1,000 adults in the UK, the British Menopause Society found that 45% of women felt that their symptoms had a negative impact on their work, and 47% actually needed to take a day off due to the menopause symptoms, but say they wouldn't tell their employer the real reason, you know, because there is a stigma. We probably don't talk about it as much, you know, that people just feel nervous talking about it. The next one was just one that I found really shocking. So Bupa found that almost 900,000 women in the UK had actually left their jobs because of menopause symptoms, which I just find crazy. And then suicide rates for women among 45 to 54, which is the most common age for perimenopause and menopause, have risen 6% in the last 20 years. And it is the highest rate of suicide amongst women, according to the Office of National Statistics, which again, it's just a shocking figure. So this is why I really wanted to set up our mini menopause forum. We do it on a bi-monthly basis. I wanted to break some of that stigma and support staff in the department. So you can move on to the next slide if you want, Natasha. So why did I want to make a difference? So in 2019, when I was 31, I was diagnosed with hormone-positive breast cancer. So I was put into a chemical menopause whilst I underwent chemotherapy and surgery. And that was planned to continue for 5 years following the end of my treatment. Sadly, in 2021, my cancer did return, and again, it was hormone positive. So I underwent another 18 months of treatment. And at that point, once I'd finished my treatment, the discussion was the best option for me to stop my cancer returning again, was to have surgical menopause. So obviously, my concern at the time was, how do I stop the cancer coming back? So I would have happily taken anything that was offered to me. So I did do that. It's been nearly 2 years now since I had my surgery. Side effects are still going strong, so that's great. At 35, I did feel really alone. Obviously quite young. Breast cancer is quite unusual at a young age, and then obviously the menopause. And I suppose the lack of education and, like I said, the stigma around it, I just sort of thought, oh, it's a couple of hot flushes and, you know, I'll be fine. It won't really affect me. But in reality, once I started researching and they give you all these leaflets and you start thinking, oh, actually, there is some more things to it. So, you know, it's like anxiety, weight gain, you can't sleep, lack of concentration, and there's just so many other side effects. You know, you don't get enough calcium in your bones, you got weak bones, which is great. So yeah. So I started researching online, and you know, some of those stats that I've come up with, I was just shocked at the amount of women that felt they couldn't carry on. And I actually started my CMA exams in 2019, just before I got diagnosed. So I'd done all my exams during my treatment, and I'd just qualified, got the job that I, you know, really worked for. And I just thought, I don't just want to give up. I've got another 30 years to work. I can't just be, you know, I just wanted to do something to support other people and also just to help myself. So I spoke to my manager, and she was really supportive, and she encouraged me to set up the forum within the department. So it's just a really laid back place. We share tips, you know, how different people deal with things, what other people are going through, and just to have a safe space for other people to listen, and just so you don't feel as alone, because sometimes things you might not identify that it's to do with the menopause. Just because you just think, oh, it can't be that, but actually when someone else says, oh, actually I experienced that as well, you just can sort of share things. So yeah, it's a really useful forum. It's got really good feedback, and yeah, that's why I set it up. So if you want to move on to the next slide, Natasha. So I'm also the health and wellbeing lead for the department. So we have about 80 staff in our department, a mix of ages, genders. So I started it in September 2023. So we've been going just over a year. We have a variety of people who join, the younger ones, people who are getting towards the age of where they might be starting the menopause, people who've been through the menopause. People can email me and say if they want to cover a specific thing. And the little purple thing is a little poster that we did that got sent around the department. And yeah, it's just been a really brilliant way to get people together. I also, being the health and wellbeing lead for the department, I also work with the Trust Health and Wellbeing lead. And I shared with her what we were doing. And we actually, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, got some menopause champions in the trust. So I was one of the first cohort of the menopause champions within the trust. I think there's 8 or 9 of us in different departments. And I shared what I'd done around this. So hopefully they are going to be setting up some mini menopause forums across numerous departments, which will be really good. And you know, some of the feedback that I've got within the department, like I said, you know, it's been sort of a safe space for people to come. So maybe the males haven't felt like they want to come and sort of impose. So I have been asked to put on by the male colleagues themselves. Some of them have approached me to put on a specific session for male colleagues about how they can support people, especially if they line manage. So I thought that was really positive. And then in the speech bubble there, we've got a quote from someone who came, one of the younger ones in the office, you know, and just from the things we were discussing, they spoke to a family member, and that family member subsequently went to the GP and you know, is going through the menopause and is now getting the support that they need. You know, and other people have said that they've spoke to their family members because, you know, it is a taboo subject and it's probably not spoken about as enough as it should be. So to know that people have been able to have that discussion and then that's led to people getting the help that they need to support them, that I think that's been a really positive outcome of it. Now I will be honest, to start with, you know, it was slow. Like I said, it's a taboo, but I have been, you know, quite vocal. I speak at we have finance away days every 6 months, so I speak at that. And the uptake has really grown. We've had, you know, senior managers come as well and attend. So, you know, it has been really positive. I try and do it over lunchtime. I try and do it face to face, but I do also put a Teams link in for those that can't come. So I just try and open it up to everybody. I always take feedback, and like I said, people are able to come with specific topics that they want to cover. So you know, we can make sure everyone's getting in what they want from it. I think there's just one more slide, Natasha. So these are just a couple of resources. Rock My Menopause is something that came from the Trust Health and Wellbeing lead. She sends out like webinars that are going on and stuff. So I actually went to one not that long ago where a lovely doctor was speaking. I think all the webinars that have been on are recorded on that link. So you can watch some of them. Really good, different topics. There's some really good resources on there. It's a bit more, it feels a bit more approachable, not as clinical, and it's trying to break that stigma again and you know, just make it something that can be talked about. And then there's just the Balance app, which you can download on App Store or Google Play, depending on what phone you've got, which can be really useful for people. It just provides a bit of support and information on there as well. So yeah, that's my little case study, and I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for asking me to speak.
Thank you so much, Kerry. There's a lot of love coming through for you in the chat, so hopefully you get a chance to read that later. I'm so sorry that happened to you, but being able to transfer it into something so positive for other people is really amazing. So well done. I think there's been some questions about sharing stuff. Those links are really great. Thank you. And I'm just going to move on to questions. Viji.
Hi, Kerry. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Just a quick outlook, like when we say menopause, obviously we are looking at certain age group. For example, we may also have early 20s, you know, late 20s colleagues in our workplace. And so is it possible to cover things like maternity, menstruation, menopause, all under menopause forum? Or how do you see that? Because do you only see certain age group coming to your forum, or do you think it's for everyone?
No, so we, like I said, we have a wide range of age ranges coming. We have the younger ones who come because they want to learn, you know, how they can support their mom or the grandma or their aunt, you know, because everyone has somebody potentially in their life that will be going through that. And not just that, we have, you know, people who maybe manage people. You know, we have, like I said, such a wide age range coming, and everybody feels like it's still a safe space to talk about things. And yeah, other things do get brought up, you know, that fall under that woman's health umbrella.
I mean, people do
it is
leave
just more
job
a menopause.
Yeah, sorry. As you may rightly mention, there are a lot of people leaving job because of menopause issue, and I think people also leave job because of maternity or menstruation issue as well. So that's why.
Yeah.
So
no, definitely, it's definitely something we can think about. But yeah. I just think, when you've worked, it's just very difficult, isn't it? You just don't want, at 45 you've still got another 20, however long in your career, and but it's open to everybody, Vigi. So yeah, any age, and it is, we do have conversations off the menopause.
Thank you, Kerry. Thanks.
Great question. Jo, you up for another question?
Yeah, I suppose what struck. Thank you for sharing your story. That's very it's really powerful stuff. A thing that struck me particularly, I guess it resonates a bit with a couple. I suppose, your symptoms came back by having your diagnosis. And the thing that a lot we don't really talk about in terms of employees is it's more common than you think it is. So my daughter, won't mind sharing. I mean, my daughter's 24. She's already had her ovary removed. She's got PCOS. She's going to have her ovary removed. So at the minute, having some treatment, so they can try and do some egg retrieval for her. So she's having awful symptoms, and will go then through she's having synthetic hormones and go through a awful period after that. I've also got a friend's daughter who basically she's in her early 20s, who's basically onset of menopause. So we always think of this kind of group of it's this 45 plus, but actually it's not that uncommon. So maybe we need to think about changing the message a little bit. And I think you're doing a great job, Kerry, because you're there, you've been there. But thinking about our wellbeing champions, we've got menopause champions in the trust, we've got forums, but we always think about the 45 plus woman, and actually we're not talking about other people. I suppose is my observations that we probably need to do more of.
Yeah, I think that was a really big part for me, Jo, to be honest, because of the age that I was. You will get comments like, if I was like, I had a fan on in a room, oh, wait till you go through the menopause, and you think, people just need to maybe be more considerate about off the cuff. And nobody means any offense to it, but I think, like we said, it's seen as a specific age group. And it's the same with breast cancer. I was 31. The chance of you getting breast cancer under 45 is so small. But people are like, you can't have and it is just trying to break that. How do we get that message across that it can affect anybody? Like you said, people can in their 20s have PCOS that, for whatever reason, people, who were 18 or have had cancer as, at a young age, again, things like that can happen, and you can be in the menopause at a very young age. So, it is something that needs to be discussed. And the Rock My Menopause does have a specific section on, like early menopause, which is, I think it classes it as under 40. It's classed as early menopause. So there is some resources on there. So, they are really good to share. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, trying to get the message out there and trying to say it isn't just this one demographic. It's so varied and wide.
Well, keep going. You're doing a great job, and
you are.
I think that's something I need to think about in terms of our well-being and how we kind of change some of
I definitely look at Rock My Menopause, Jo. There's some brilliant resources on there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jo. Okay, Lauren, last question, please.
Thanks, Kerry. Just to obviously echo all the comments. It's really interesting to hear your story. This is something I would have massively appreciated at my previous role. I was kind of managing a larger team for the first time, and more than one of my team members was going through this, and I think they would have benefited from it, but also I would have done as their manager. And I guess, how have you kind of managed that because you want to create a safe space for people, but I don't think it would have been appropriate for me to attend the same forum as them, to keep it kind of confidential and make everybody comfortable. So how have you dealt with that?
So like I said, we did have small uptake to begin with. And as a department, we do work quite well together. And I think maybe the people who have a female manager feel maybe more like they can approach and they're happy to share if the manager's in there. I think it was more the male element, and how do we educate some of the males, one, to want to approach the topic, and two, to make people feel comfortable approaching that topic. And even if that's them coming to me, you know, being in the senior leadership team and going to their manager and saying, look, they don't feel comfortable talking about the situation to you, but they're happy for me. You know, it's about giving them a safe space to feel like they can do that. And I think, like you said, Lauren, it's about you as a manager having that education yourself to be able to feel like you can support people, and then people might feel like they can come to you because you've got that knowledge and you can understand a bit better. I think it's just everyone just being a bit more, just thinking.
It's the knowledge though, isn't it, that breaks the boundary. And then once you both know, then you can have the conversation. If neither of you really understand what's going on, you're just up against a brick wall, aren't you? Some of the resources you mentioned there, I'll definitely look into those. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for everybody's questions. Well done, Kerry. Thanks again for speaking this morning, and I think you've passed your message on really, really well.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
We're going to move on to a team effort this time. So we've got Karen Elliott, Cheryl Watson and Charlotte Caulfield, who are going to talk to us about all things health and wellbeing at NHS North of England CSU.
Morning all.
Morning.
This is very odd because I can't see the other two of my team on my screen, but there you go.
I'm just getting it loaded up, Karen.
Oh, thank you. While that happens, guess I should just introduce us and let you know who we are. So I'm Karen Elliott. I'm the head of programme for what we call the finance consultancy team at NEX. Charlotte Caulfield and Cheryl Watson are both part of the finance team. I'm the sponsor for the Finance, Health and Wellbeing group, and Charlotte and Cheryl are two of our amazing health and wellbeing champions, and we have quite a few across finance. So thanks for putting that up. And we're going to talk to you today about who we are, what we do, maybe answer some of your questions about how you get people involved and how you do that, how you try and do that anyway. Some hints and tips about health and wellbeing, and then we'll take any questions. And there've been quite a lot of those answered already, haven't there? So I'm just in my mind quickly redoing my presentation because I was going to talk a lot about the menopause, but Kerry's got that one sussed, hasn't she? So can we move on? So who we are and what we do. So although we're the North of England Commissioning Support Unit, if there are any other CSUs on the line, we really do not work just in the north of England, and that gives us some issues. So we have staff that are based in London, we have staff that work out of Surrey, we have staff that are based in Sheffield, a lot of our staff are based up in Newcastle or Middlesbrough. We've got people working all over, and we work on all sorts of different things. So as a finance team, there is over 100 of us in finance, and we work in more or less three different teams. So we have our corporate team who help run the organisation. We have a financial management team who support NENC ICB, so the North of England, North Cumbria ICB. And then we have my part of the team, which, as I say, is more like a financial consultancy team, but we also support other integrated care boards. So we're a wide-ranging group of staff with different skills who work across the country. As I said, there are around about 100 of us. We've been through, shall I say, some turbulent times over the last 2 years, and health and wellbeing has become increasingly important to support the team through some of that. Just a little bit of background. So obviously the integrated care boards were all hit with a 30% reduction of running costs. So about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And as a result of that, we went through a compulsory redundancy scheme. So at that point, we unfortunately lost some members of the team. We were sort of coming out of that in, oh, sorry. All that's on the screen at the minute is who are we and what we do. Joanna?
Yeah, so some of us can see them and some of us can't. Are you sharing or is it Natasha?
Charlotte sharing.
Oh, Charlotte. Do you mind resharing and we'll see if it worked?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
There's nothing much to worry about at the minute. It just
Okay.
says who we are and what we do. So you're not missing anything. So we'd gone through a compulsory redundancy scheme. We were just about to put in place a new structure for the finance team. And we were then told that our main ICB customer wanted to in-house that part of the team. So we're currently going through another consultation. We'd only just finished the last one, where we will be in-housing round about 50 staff from the finance team. So a huge amount of change going on. Can you see those now? Yes? Yes? Anyone? Can anyone
Yeah,
not
I
see
can.
them? Okay.
But...
Yeah, brilliant. Right, thanks all. So, as I said, health and wellbeing has become increasingly important, and you can probably all see why, because we're just managing continual change. I think from my part of the team, because we work out on assignments, so sometimes we work nationally, sometimes we work with individual trusts, sometimes we work near our home, sometimes we work miles away. We're permanently changing. So we don't necessarily just work with our own finance team. Sometimes we work, at the moment, I'm working with a couple of hospital trusts. So I'm working with other teams, and it's how we keep in touch and how we keep our well-being central that's important to all of us. And I think as a senior sponsor, my role is to ensure that happens with the brilliant health and wellbeing champions we've got, to allow them to come up with ideas and to allow them to do very random things. And you'll see some of that shortly. Do you want to move on, Charlotte? So although I'm talking about the finance element of health and wellbeing, and by the way, if you are a health and wellbeing champion in our finance team, that is part of your objectives and it does become part of your appraisal. And I know somebody's touched on, do you have time? Yes, we do allocate time to people. You get a maximum of 1 hour a week in order to do some of this. A lot of our champions don't actually use that time, but it is there and available. And we've only just agreed that fairly recently, because if we're saying it's important, we need to make it important. So we do allow people time. We also have other champions. So I'm not talking about training and development. We have training and development champions. We have continuous improvement champions. We have a whole range of people doing that. And oh, sorry, someone still can't see. This is a bit weird. And what we're trying to do is say, look, as part of your health and wellbeing, doing a little bit of what really interests you is also important. So if you're stuck in a role where you're thinking, I really don't get this, you can still do a little bit of what makes you tick, and you are able to do that, and we'll support you to be a champion in an area that you like. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Do you want to share them? Anyway,
Natasha,
I'll move on.
do you have our slides? Because I've got pictures coming up.
I do, yeah, I can share them for you.
If I stop sharing, then it hopefully
yeah
it'll
yeah
work.
that's fine. Bear with me one second.
Yeah.
As well as us having like a finance, health and wellbeing group, we also have some great support from our corporate team. We are, I think, in year 5 of the Maintaining Excellence Award for Health and Wellbeing at NEX. We are supported to have health and wellbeing champion training. If we want to be mental health first aiders, we're supported to get that training. We're also supported to have things like suicide awareness training. So if you want to do that, you can. It's not compulsory. There are also lots of other corporate things that we do, all virtual. We're not allowed to travel at the moment. We have tight spending regulations on us, so everything's done virtually. We do have a menopause cafe, and I'll just touch on it because I did want to talk about it. But the main thing we've done on that is we've got Henpicked involved with us, who are a brilliant organisation. If any of you haven't used them and are doing menopause things, can't can't tell you how good they are, and they generally try and make themselves available. And we're lucky because we have prescribers who work for us as part of our NEX family, and we have some prescribers who come to that forum and talk around HRT issues, advise people on how to get the best from their GP, that sort of thing. Hey, we're finally there. I think we've got there. Other groups we've tapped into are things like Angie's Men's Club. We know that we have issues around, I know, I shouldn't say that and generalise, but I think are men more upfront about talking about their issues? We know there's an issue with male suicide. Angie's Men's Club came and talked. And another group, a bit like Henpicked, who are brilliant and just want to get involved. We have lots of corporate safe spaces, like mental health cafes. The menopause cafe is a safe space. I was intrigued what somebody said about if I'm there, would people not share? And maybe that came across wrong. I just think we're a very open and trusting organisation, and anybody can say anything in front of anyone, I would hope. But if not, they all know that there are safe areas to go to. I'm sort of waffling on at you, but at least we've all got the slides on. There are lots of other things we do. We do have a corporate thank you wall where you can post thank yous from customers or from other members of your team, and that gets posted on our intranet site. And then said other things like flu jabs that are difficult for us to organise because we're so geographically spread. So we will pay for people to get vouchers and things. But there's a lot that goes on corporately, and our Health and Wellbeing Finance, Health and Wellbeing team are invited to those corporate sessions to be updated and to input into what we want to do. So things like we now have a menopause procedure. We don't have a menopause policy. I'm not quite sure why, but we have something called the menopause procedure, and guidance for managers and things like that has come out of it. Shall I move on and pass over the baton?
Yeah. Natasha, if you could go on the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to focus on what we do as a finance team in terms of health and wellbeing. So we kind of take a pick and mix approach to our health and wellbeing offers without the huge amounts of sugar. That wouldn't be very health and wellbeing of us. So if you think when you go to pick a mix, we all choose a different combination of sweets that we would put in our bag or in our tub to take into the cinema, because we've all got different preferences. So we found that's the case with health and wellbeing initiatives too. Some people want a bit of everything. Some people will just want one thing. Some people want a couple of things. So we try and put on as much as we possibly can with a huge variety of things, so that at least somewhere somebody can find something that will help them. Another, leading on from what Karen said, because our team is so widespread, we had to take different approaches for this. We can't all be in person all the time with each other. We do try to do a lot of things virtually. So you can see we've put up some of the things that we've worked on with health and wellbeing in our team on the slide there, but there are plenty more going on as well. So we have some virtual things that we have going on. So we have a virtual office. So that's kind of like what you would chat about in office if you were in person together. There's a Teams chat for that, where you can kind of pop anything in there that you're thinking, feeling about, watched on the TV last night. We have Photo Friday, so people will pop a photo in there and share something about their week, or Music Friday, so you can put a music video in about how you're feeling, how your week's gone, something you're looking forward to at the weekend, just like you would have if you were in the office together, and it would get you chatting about these things. Or you'd say, oh, have a look at this photo I took this week, or something like that. We've then got the other side of things where we do around about quarterly health and wellbeing walk on a Friday afternoon. So again, that time is put aside for you in work time, where you can go for a walk. So we try and set up different locations throughout the team, because we're all so widespread, and say a few people are meeting here, a few people are meeting there. If you can't meet, you can just take time for yourself and go for a walk on your own if you'd prefer. We do, when we are in the office, we've got a calendar slot that is for a walk where we all get out and go for a walk around the office, not around the office, out of the office, on our office days. So we've got lots of different things going on. We've got mobile phone challenge was one of those that, you know, some people really got a lot out of and other people didn't. So with Stoptober, we thought it was a good idea to come up with a challenge for people. We don't have many, if any, smokers in our team. So we came up with a mobile phone challenge instead. And people would try to reduce their mobile phone usage. They would feedback every week on what their kind of average daily time on their phone was, and they'd try hard to try and reduce that week on week. We'd share ideas of how to kind of bring that time down. And some people got loads out of it, but again, others didn't. And that's the basis of the pick and mix idea. One of our biggest initiatives is probably our step challenge. Natasha, if you go on the next slide, I've got a few pictures on that one. Gonna go. There we go. So we've been running our step challenge now for 3 years. We like to try and give it a theme. It usually happens in the summer months so that we can get out and about. We've had a Commonwealth theme, we've had a Eurovision theme, an Olympics theme. And what we do is we try and get into teams of 4. And we come up with a daily goal depending on your own kind of where you are physically. So you could have a 3,000, 7,000, 10,000 or 13,000 step goal for your day. And you total that up for the week, how many steps you got, and you submit your total. You do that as a team, and then each week a leaderboard is sent out of how your team's doing and who's winning and who's not. And we've had such a good uptake for this, probably because it's a team challenge. So you're in it with other people. You've got a team captain who's kind of encouraging you. It's also really well supported by senior leadership, and even some of the execs of NEX have got involved in this as well. So that support from the top really helps other people think they should get involved with things. It's evolved over the years. So initially it was like hundreds of Excel spreadsheets coming in with their totals. Now we've got to the point where it's done on forms and they can bring it all together nice and easily, and we can send out the results. And we get challenge winners at the end of the 4 weeks. We try to get people to share their photos so we can see what people have been up to, because people are going all over the world getting their steps in. And not only is it good for your physical health, it's good for your mental health, but also team morale as well. So we found that's one of our biggest initiatives. But like I said, it's not for everyone, and not 100% of the team get involved, but they may get involved in other things that we put on as well. So yeah, I think I'm passing over to you, Cheryl.
Yeah, that's great. So I was going to try and do a quick Menti, but I don't know if Natasha's able to see the results because she's sharing, but I'm happy to shout out some of the words as they come in. So if you can, please just either use the QR code or log into mentimeter.com, and if we can use the access code on screen, 63854736. And it's just really the answer, what does a healthy workplace look like to you? Just a few words or just a word, just to see how that looks like and what that means to you. I can see some words coming through now. No stress staff, happy and chatty, flexible work, and yeah, these are all really good, important things that we need to see in the workplace. Happy colleagues, understanding, work-life balance is massive, key to happy staff, happy workplace. Just give a couple more seconds for a few more things to come through. Yeah, no stress, engaging workforce, friendly. I think I need my eyes testing, so I've got to go right at the screen. Yeah, trusted. So these are, I think you can go onto the QR code, whoever's just asked that question, or use the access code.
I can't see it anymore.
Yeah.
We got a code.
63854736. But yeah, I can just shout shout them out. Yeah, so supportive, smiles, engaged staff, work-life balance, laughter, upbeat, all these things we know, and that's what we need in the workplace. So Natasha, if you just go back and share the slides, please. That'll just lead us on to the next slide.
Sorry, bear with me 1 second.
All right. There's always a technical issue, isn't there? Yeah, so if we just move on to the next slide, please. So all them things that we'll put in the Menti is how do we implement flexible working and having that happy environment? How do we keep that momentum up? And how do we apply all these things in our working day? So what we have just shared here is some useful hints and tips that you may want to use in your teams to help improve health and wellbeing in the workplace. So Charlotte has touched on some of these on the previous slide, but I'll just go into a little bit more detail. So one thing that's worked for us is setting up a health and wellbeing channel in our dedicated teams area, which can be used to share lots of fun and helpful information. For example, we've used it to signpost colleagues to any upcoming sessions or events on external sites like NHS Finance, Skills Development Network, on things all health and wellbeing, like managing stress, ways of working, wellness, resilience. We've also used this channel to share tools and sites available to attend any training for your staff and for yourselves, just to better your skills, further your development, to learn something new. Charlotte touched before on CI and things like new ideas. For example, someone could put in the chat a quick fix or shortcut on Excel. That might be really, really helpful for someone to save time, or it doesn't even have to be work related. You could pop in anything that makes your day better, any apps you're using on your phone, things like that. We've also used this channel to set a theme, like we've said on the previous slide, Photo Friday, uploading funny pictures, Music Friday, Music Monday, sharing your favourite tunes. And we've also just used this channel for like a virtual chat and a check-in. Again, for those who work remotely, to avoid that silo work, and just pop on and say good morning. Does anyone need any help? How's their day going? And again, we've also used this channel for a thank you, gratitude board, just to let our colleagues know that we appreciate them. Some other ideas we've tried to encourage our team to do is to avoid the meetings between 12 and 1 rule, or block out some protected time in your diary, and really utilise this time by taking a real lunch break, like not just grabbing a coffee and working through your lunch break, just actually switch off your screen and step away from the desk. And in that time, you could go for a short walk outdoors, practice yoga, mindfulness in this time out. You could read or listen to a podcast or an audio book. If you are having like a particularly heavy day, you could take this protected time to really reset your brain and sort of prioritise your workload, like what needs to get done and how best to organise your afternoon to get the most achieved. So we've tried to implement that in our team. And then moving on to meetings, we've tried this may not necessarily work, but it's something that we've put out there to see if it does work. Teams meeting doesn't always need to be via Teams. Could you change it up a bit and have a meeting outside? Weather dependent, obviously. Could you have a meeting in a social space or a walk-in meeting? If you have a dedicated office day face-to-face, have that meeting and maybe incorporate a team building task or an activity like a quiz or a Menti, or in your face-to-face meetings, it could just be quite informal, like grab a coffee and bring some snacks. I know someone mentioned cake earlier in the chat. That always helps as well. In terms of meetings as well, I think it's probably been mentioned on previous sessions before. Instead of putting a Teams meeting in for 60 minutes, could you reduce that to 50 minutes, 55 minutes? We have a big team meeting on a Tuesday. It starts at 11 and finishes at 10 to 12, just to give us a chance to have that breather, make a cuppa, prepare for our next meeting, just so we're not back to back, because I know meetings can just be heavy and inundated and you get no time to even breathe. Some other stuff that we've tried to implement in our team and encourage what we feel has worked well is organise a team away day. We have one every month. Again, we do some activities in this session. We can also use this session to discuss any issues or ideas to help improve the team in the workplace. We welcome all ideas, all opinions, and we really use this time to talk about how we want our working day to look and how we want next to be in the future. We've also done some health and wellbeing afternoons, like a social activity where, as I say, we've gone on a quarterly dog walk, or we've gone and played crazy golf, or went bowling on a Friday afternoon, just to sort of bring us together a little bit more and a little bit better. A few more things is just the housekeeping stuff, really. Ensure you have those regular one-to-ones and catch-ups with your staff and with your line manager to really have those health and wellbeing conversations. We have a dedicated area on our one-to-one template for health and wellbeing to really ask our staff and to just really say, how are you really doing? How's everything at home? What can we do to support you? Have you got any personal issues? So do we need to signpost you to Oc Health, or have you got a particularly busy time at home next week where you might need to work flexibly if you've got things on? So we do really encourage that. But yeah, the last point's just the stuff that we probably know but probably don't do as often is just take them regular 5-minute breaks throughout the day to avoid you losing focus and burnout. Drinking your water, staying hydrated, exercising just for as little as 30 minutes a day, even if it's just a walk, just to really increase productivity and energy levels and reduce stress. And then we also try and promote sleep, having those 7 hours of sleep per night, just so you wake up in the morning and you're in a good mood, sets you up for the rest of the day, things like that. So these are just some helpful hints and tips that we have shared around our finance team, just to try and bring us together, really focus on our health and wellbeing. We know how difficult it is to take the time out to look after ourselves. It's not always easy. We lead busy lives during work and outside of work, but by sharing these, we're hoping to make the team a healthy workplace, and making these little changes can have a huge impact and positive lasting effects. Just want to reiterate what Charlotte and Karen have said, that it's not for everyone. Some people come to a social afternoon out bowling or for food or drinks or whatever every single time, but would never put anything in the Music Monday. Or some people would never come and be really active on the virtual chat, things like that. So yeah, it's strengths and weaknesses for both, and we just don't put any pressure on our staff to be involved in every single thing. That's why we try and have this wide range. Also, just want to hit on a note that we do have the support from higher up at that senior level. So I would just say, if you are in a leadership management role, to really encourage staff, because that helps us know that if we have a manager on board promoting this, keep checking in and saying, look, remember to look after yourself, that really, really does make a difference. I'll leave it there because I know we've rattled on a little bit and I don't want to run over time. But yeah.
Can I come in on the back of that one though, Cheryl?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I know there's a few queries about people not engaging. Well, sometimes people don't want to engage, and that's just how it is. But I think, as one of the senior managers in the team, things like the dog walk. I take my dog and I make sure I make time to be there. I don't just say you've got the time to do it and go and do it. I do go. So I think you don't just need people to say that they're going to do it and that you've got the ability to do it. You need to actually get some of your senior team there and present and, making the time to actually participate, because otherwise people do still feel like, oh, that's just a bit of something and we don't need to do it. We can sort of quite clearly see some of that in across our team where pockets don't participate and, they're just not being necessarily engaged in the right way, whereas other pockets absolutely do. And just sometimes it's just not for them. And I know somebody put something on about how do you get people to open up about responsibilities at home and everything. I think we've got really good open communication. We really have. If management lines aren't working and it looks like people aren't getting on with the manager, we will look to change that management line and we'll move people around until there's a better fit. But even things like, I'm quite open about the issues that I have with my team, and I hope that encourages my team to be open with me. So there's all sorts that we do. I don't think there is an answer, but we've got a great team of people who keep coming up with random ideas that sometimes work and sometimes don't.
You can see that through your presentation. Really, really good teamwork and so many ideas. Thank you for sharing those. The pick and mix is a fantastic analogy to how we can provide health and wellbeing support to everybody. I'm afraid we're out of time. So any questions, if people can pop them in the chat, if you can get a chance to have a look at them and maybe answer them, or we can pick them up offline. We've got one more. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. We've got one more presentation before our break. It's Jodie Millard who's going to be talking about Norfolk and Suffolk NHS FT and their book club and staff book swap libraries. Over to you, Jodie.
Hiya, thank you. I know we're kind of running out of time here and coming up to the break. So what I'm going to do is I'll just whiz through it and give you a brief idea of, how it's been going. I just wanted to say as well, I'm amazed at all of those different initiatives and things that you've set up there. And I've found that really helpful. There's loads of stuff I'm going to take back, I think, for NSFT. So thank you for that. Our book group, it started 2 years ago, and like you said, you sometimes set these initiatives up and you don't know which way they're going to go. Sometimes they're more often than not, I think it's getting that engagement, and that can be really difficult. But I was shocked with how the book club took off. We sent out an initial article just asking if anyone would be interested in it before Christmas a couple of years ago, and within a couple of weeks we had 200 people sign up. So I was absolutely amazed, and it was something that I'd never been to. I'd never been to a book club before, and there were lots of personal reasons for setting that up. I used to read books all the time. I used to commute on the tube a lot, and I seemed to have a lot of time to read. And I think I had stopped reading, and I'd just given myself loads of excuses, like I'm busy, I'm driving around rather than going on the tube and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, I think we're all quite bad at scrolling through our phones and stuff, or watching things on telly. So that was something that we talked about as wellbeing champions, how that can be impact on you quite badly, all that social media stuff, and just everything now is electronic. Every form you have to fill in, it's never on paper, you're always looking at a screen of some sort. So that was kind of the initial reasons that we set the book group up. And it took off really well. It was a bit of a learning curve for all of us. I chose some books to start. I chose 5 books, got all of the members to do a poll, and we read our first book, and it was really lovely just to have that initial group teams discussion. We have to do everything online really, otherwise it just doesn't work. We're a very big trust. There's about 5,000 of us, so trying to do anything locally and face to face can be quite difficult. And it was just lovely seeing that connection that happened over the months that the group developed and grew, you know, because you've got people there from all different areas of the trust, all different teams, different professions, and they're just connecting through a love of reading, or perhaps not through a love of reading. We have some real sort of disagreements over books and things. Something that we made clear from the very start was, you know, this, don't be scared of joining the book group. It wasn't going to be, you know, highbrow literary conversation. Quite often, if it's a book that's been turned into a film or a series, we start off talking about the book, and then we start talking about, have you seen this, you know, adaptation? And it's just nice hearing about how people read, really. So it's like, you know, do you read an actual book? Do you go to the library? Do you read audiobooks? And then people will swap you know, offers on Kindles and Audible and things like that. And we've got people sending copies of books through the internal post. So I think it's been a lovely sociable thing. We've got a really great intranet page there where we've asked our members for a reader's profile, and it's been a bit like, I don't know if anyone here will remember this, like Smash Hits magazine, where you've got that reader profile, so you've got their photo, and then you've just got details, you know, what's your favorite book, what do you like reading, would you recommend coming to the book group? And I think the feedback from most people has been the social element, because also having that half-hour meeting, just, I don't even like calling it a meeting, having that half-hour group meet up once a month is a real excuse just to take half an hour from work and have a cup of tea, or, you know, some people eat their lunch while they're chatting. So it's just putting that time aside, gets you off your phone, gets you back into reading. So it has been very successful in that way. And it's just developed where people were swapping books through the internal post. We've then gone on to set up book swap areas at our different sites. We've got around 52 different sites across the trust. And I think we've got about 20 book swaps up and running now. And we just set up a very easy package that we could email out to staff. So an introductory email they can send out to their team telling them about the book swap, a template of a poster so they can, you know, advertise where it is and things like that within their building. And what else did we do? We set up some stickers, like templates that you can stick in the front of any books that are donated, and then it's entirely up to that staff member if they want to put in their name to say that they donated the book. But we've had people emailing each other and saying, you know, thanks for lending that book, it was brilliant, I really enjoyed it. So there, it's just, you know, extending that sort of social aspect. But yeah, so we've had a lot of positive comments there. Could I have the next slide, please? I was just going to touch on our physical health activities. We have some challenges. We have a couple each year, and I was really interested to hear about the staff step challenge that you ran. It's just lovely to see all the photographs and everything, and it's really nice because I think, again, it builds up that networking opportunity for people to have that social that social aspect there. So we started off with a step challenge, and I completely feel your pain there with the initial spreadsheets of counting all those steps, and then we went onto forms, and then some people put the information in differently. So I did find counting all those steps, you know, and it's surprising how many steps people can do and how many people sign up. So I think it can be quite, I think now when I go into organising these physical health challenges, I do have to think about how much organisation is this going to take, processing all that information that comes in. So we've done 3 step challenges that have all had really good sign up. And then we just got feedback from the staff saying, you know, perhaps it wasn't the most inclusive thing to do. So we swapped it around a little bit, and we did a time challenge. So that was any sort of exercise you do. How much time do you spend? And all of these challenges can be done as a team or as an individual. It's entirely up to how people want to do it, really. We've done Get Active Autumn. That was more of an independent one, so that was all about setting your own goals, and I've just got, there's some details there on the slide, and I think it was really lovely just to get that. I think it was one of the highest feedback, things we got that was positive about taking part, was the sense of achievement that people get, which is really, really important, I think. And it's just having these challenges running at work. Sometimes you just haven't got the strength to do it yourself outside of work. So it's good to have that accountability and to get these things running at work. And again, they always have a really active Teams channel, and I love the way that people swap what they've been doing and congratulate each other. And it's really interesting just finding out more about people, and the people that are doing sort of Ironman challenges and running all these marathons and stuff. I think it's amazing. So it's a really lovely way to celebrate each other and our achievements too. But then saying that, we did a challenge that was, I don't even sometimes like to call it a challenge, because I think that puts too much pressure on people sometimes. We celebrated Mental Health Awareness Week with something we set up called Get Outdoors. If you wouldn't mind just moving on to the next slide, please. We just suggested to people perhaps, getting outdoors, getting walking, doing a bit of exercise, how beneficial it can be. So it was a kind of physical health challenge, but at the same time, it was very low level. Don't put yourself under any pressure, and really just enjoy being outside when you can and really think about it. So we put together this calendar of prompts, and it just had things about, drink your first cup of tea in the morning outside, or even if you just open the window, not everyone's got a garden, or you've got a balcony, or, do a bit of bird watching. Just these really sort of just easy prompts. And it wasn't even, you have to do all of them. It was just have a look through the calendar, see if there's anything that speaks to you. And we just put details on there about things like getting free membership to Headspace and stuff like that. So that was looking at our engagement on our intranet page, because each challenge we set up a page and we set up a Teams group. But looking at the traffic on this, the calendar was really popular, and we also just did a sheet where people could set themselves a few goals that they wanted to make that month. But it was really it was a gentle one, and I think sometimes it's quite nice to have that as an option rather than saying, who's done the most kind of thing. So yeah, that was a really quick tour of bits that we've been getting up to, but I didn't want to take up too much time because I know we're into the break now.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jodie. I love the suggestion of the daily things, and the book club sounds absolutely fantastic. I think there's a few questions in the chat, and if anyone else has got questions, if you wouldn't mind popping them into the chat. What we'll do next is, so thank you so much, Jodie, and all of our speakers from this morning. It's been a really good start to the conference, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do your slides and come and talk to us. We're going to go for a break now. It's literally going to be 5 minutes, so we're going to start again at 11:15 with Dr. William Bird, who's going to be talking to us about the neuroscience of stress. So thank you for your engagement this morning. Hopefully I'll see you back at 11:15. Hello, welcome back. It's 11:15. We're going to move on to our next speaker. Dr. William Bird is set up Intelligent Health to provide healthier, active and more connected communities. So he's going to present to us on the neuroscience of stress and strategies to reduce this in our lives. Thank you, Dr. William Bird. Handing over to you.
Thank you very, very much indeed. I hope you can hear me okay. So yes, I have spoken to, I think, some of you before, and just a background, I'm a GP. I've been a GP for a very long time, but a real fascination on seeing how many patients are dealing with problems of stress and how that can lead to so many of our illnesses that we have, including diabetes, dementia, all these other things. We're learning so much about what happens in the brain when we become stressed. So today, it's very practical. I'm going to be talking about basically what stress is, acute stress versus chronic stress, totally different things. And then, of course, everyone wants to know, how do we deal with it? What is it? You know, is it something we need to get out of our lives, or is it something we need to just accept and control? And then what happens in the future if we don't get it sorted? And then, of course, in our work, we're all stressed very often, and it's trying to work out how do we actually deal with those stresses that come. We can't often avoid them. They come, and I'm going to tell you how you can learn to perhaps just deal with them in a way that allows you to be more in control. So here we go. We've got if you can just have a look at this, there is the QR code there. There is a bit of a survey. I will put these up at the end as well. But I'm going to ask you if you can look at this QR code now. This is to understand about what your views of stress are. So if you don't mind just going to this one now, having a quick look at that, it won't take very long. I'm just going to leave it there for a bit. I was just fascinated by the in Suffolk about all the work you're doing about being outdoors. I've actually been setting up green social prescribing back in the 1990s. So being outdoors is so important. We're going to touch on it today when we're dealing with stress, of how important that is. So I'm just going to also just make sure I'm trying to move and get the slideshow from the beginning. Right. So I'm going to now move on, because we're going to go through all of this. It's going to be hopefully stuff that you do find new, and it's not something that, you know, it's the same old thing about have to do the things to deal with stress. So first of all, I know you've got another session after this on resilience, which is going to be obviously fascinating. Resilience is important. This is the one, if you've listened to the one we talk about in resilience, is the different areas of our life that we can help to give us that buffer, that buttress of the resilience. And if we get this right, it means that we can deal with chronic stress so much more easily. So relationships are obviously absolutely vital. Now, some of them can create stress, but in the whole, if we don't have good relationships, if we don't have close relationships, it affects our health in a very difficult way. Longitudinal studies done from 1935, the Harvard study, has shown that the one single most important thing that one can do is to live a happier, longer life, is to have social connections. It overrides smoking, it overrides obesity, it overrides inactivity. It is the single most important. They do say not all relationships are easy, but by keeping those relationships going, will actually have a real big impact. Same about friendships around you as well, feeling valued, feeling listened to, and being able to listen to value others. So what we give out to other people, we actually get back in resilience in our way of dealing with stress. So if we listen to someone, if we respect them, we will get more value back again to ourselves. Community, belonging to community, having those micro conversations of someone at the door, the ticket collector, the person in the shop, those people we see just intermittently, that has also been shown to be an incredibly powerful way of making sure that we feel belonging into a community. Even if these people we don't really know, these small conversations make a big difference, and we can be quite isolated in ourselves. Being grateful for things and having, at the end of the day, gratitude to everything that we've got. We look at our deficits, we look at what we could have, we look at what we feel would be unjustly, in an unjust world. But actually we have an awful lot ourselves, and looking at that and actually having more of a optimistic outlook. Our values are really important, and often we don't know what those values are. We don't appreciate what they are, but we have to keep our values alongside those in our workplace and in our family and in our community, and being aware of those values and sharing them and being with those who've got similar values. That is another aspect. Being a place where you feel secure, the psychological safety of the workplace is so important, where you can feel you can talk about something without feeling you're going to be judged and reprimanded from it. So having that ability to be yourself, basically, and also having some area where you can go and secure as well. Place attachment, going to places. So people who've just moved house sometimes feel quite isolated, and we just have to work on exploring everywhere, going to the cafes, going to those places, going to community groups, going to arts lessons, going to anywhere you can start to meet people. That's been shown to build your resilience. So we've got all of those things in place, let's say, because the middle one is self-awareness and discovery, which is obviously a huge area of where we improve ourselves through our physical activity, through our diet, through believing in ourselves. So if we get this all completely right, what happens? Well, we get stresses every day, and they're important to give us some acute stress. We do need some acute stress, but acute stress goes up and it comes back down again. And at the end of it, we're in a much better state. It's called hypostasis. We actually built a little bit more resilience. We feel we've overcome a problem, and therefore we feel good about ourselves. And therefore that leads to positive emotions, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which we'll talk about, starts to take action. What happens when that resilience is not right? We're isolated, we're lonely, we don't feel in a secure place, we don't feel there's any connection to nature, our values are not aligned to those around us, we don't have hope, we feel really downbeat, and we don't feel there's any safety in around. Then that acute stress comes up like before, but now it goes into chronic stress, and that's a completely different part of the body. The body changes completely. So when you've got acute stress going to chronic stress, the hormones that come out, like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, start to shift in the body and make things much worse. So instead of doing this the fight and flight side, things like cortisol start to change dramatically, as we'll see. And this arguably is the biggest epidemic we have, not just in this country, in the world. That the shift of humanity into chronic stress has led to a lot of the non-communicable diseases through chronic inflammation. So what happens, you get these negative emotions now, because we're in fight and flight. We now don't trust people. We now are more angry. We now we hunker down a lot more. We don't want to meet people so much. We become irritable. We become sad. We withdraw. All of those negative emotions are there for protection. There's nothing wrong there's not something that's gone wrong in our body. We're reacting to what our bodies are designed to do to try and protect us. Our unhealthy behaviors, and this is something I'll be talking about in other talks, when you're chronically stressed, you then start to eat more carbohydrate and more calorific things because you need the energy and you need calories. The biggest thing that happens, the biggest threat to an animal is starvation. So we've been designed that under stress, we get as many calories as possible. So our physical activity levels go down, our increase of food goes up. That's because of certain hormones that come through, like cortisol and ghrelin. So our behaviors change. We sleep less. We find that now addictive behavior becomes easier because we're trying to counteract the unpleasantness of this negative emotions. And you get the stress hormones coming through. That cortisol raises our blood sugar. So we start getting more diabetes in the world. We start getting more obesity. We start getting more heart disease. And this chronic inflammation at the bottom, I won't go into all of this, don't worry, but mitochondrial dysfunction, it's all connected to that chronic stress at the start. And then you've got disease at the bottom. diabetes, dementia. But you've also got an unpleasant way of living before that. So one thing I will just do, because I'm not going to talk about it too much, is that when you're building a resilience and dealing with stress, you'll find that some people find that they have to start eating, because we tend to want to eat the wrong things when we're stressed, and we have to try and overcome that. Physical activity, we tend to become less active. Now, you'll find there's some people who say the only way they deal with stress is by becoming active, and other people look at those people in kind of slight kind of awe, really, say, well, no, when I get stressed, I just eat more and just kind of hunker down and just don't go out. If you've actually had problems with physical activity in the past, you will find that you will not become active. Physical activity is not a way of dealing with stress. But if you've done a lot of physical activity in the past, you'll find that physical activity is a really good way of dealing with stress. What you have to remember is that all of us are very different, and we all need to try and get that physical activity because it will work, but for some people it'll be harder. And then sleep prevents one from dealing with stress, but of course most stress you tend to get worse sleep. So these three things are really important to try and overcome. I'm not going to go through in detail today, but let's just summarize in. All those resilience factors around us, of people, the place around us, our own purpose, they all help us, protect us, buffer us from the stresses going on. It means that if we get that wrong, and we'll obviously hear in the next hour after me about that resilience, then acute stress goes to chronic stress. And when chronic stress happens, we start getting a complete change of our emotions, of our lifestyle, and those damaging stress hormones start to cause damage to our cells. And if unchecked, it starts to create disease in the body. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we stop ourselves going down that one pathway and instead going to the other pathway where things start to get really good. So at this very minute, your little radar going on, and you're trying to understand what's going on in the around you, not just around you, but what other people are thinking, what I'm saying, what other people perhaps in the room or later, and obviously what's going on inside your body about whether you've got lots of butterflies in your stomach, whether you've got anxiety, whether you've got worries. All of this is going into our brains. And what it's doing is matching those feelings with the past. So when we've got events that have taken place in the past, they all lay down. Now, they do slowly fade away, but any memory that's associated with adrenaline, and that can be good or bad, they're laid down more strongly, and dopamine is one of the neurotransmitters that actually then acts as a marker. So those memories that have been bad will stay forever. And if you've had a really traumatic childhood, you'll find there's a huge number of those events, and it means our stress system is much more sensitive about picking them up. So you tend to become more anxious. Now, acute stress, we said, hormones rise and fall, that's all good. That's what we want. Chronic stress, we find that there is a permanent, and you find that the stress now is constant. The hormones don't go back down again. They just stay up and carry on. And the hippocampus regulates those hormones. So the hippocampus is the area of the brain that will actually help moderate whether our pituitary adrenal system is going to work or not. So we're trying to get from that chronic stress back to acute stress. Now, this radar is picking everything up all the time. It's gathering that data. And as soon as it finds something which replicates or remembers or reminds us of some event in the past, you'll get a big red buzzer going on in our brain. And that is a feeling called neuroception. So neuroception is that feeling deep down that something's not right. We don't know what it is, but we know that there's been a trigger. It could be what someone said. It could be a smell. It could be what we've seen. It could be that we felt slighted. We've been told we haven't been very good at our work. We've been ignored. All of those things will be a trigger deep down that reminds us of something when we were a child. And of course, our brains are much more biased to threat. So we will always be looking at the bad things, unfortunately, apart from just the good things. So here's Sonia, and her colleagues have just got up and they've walked out when she was having a coffee, and immediately she goes into a huge anxiety and worries because in her childhood, she had separation from her father and he went away, and that remains in there every time people walk away from her. Now, they were innocently having to go to another meeting, but because she was left there on her own, because she just joined, she has those feelings. And this is what happens to a lot of us. We don't quite know what it is, but somehow there's that trigger. And what we need to do is to be a little bit more self-aware of what those feelings are and perhaps why they've happened, because they're there to protect us. So you have that neuroception, which is deep down of the feeling that something's not quite right. That little red flag has gone, the radar's picked something up. We then get a perception of uneasiness or feeling not very good. We then get into a bit of a state. I'm a bit of an anxiety, I'm a bit worried, I'm a bit depressed, I'm a bit down, I'm a bit angry. We get into a state and they turn into feelings that we can then start to articulate, and that changes into behavior. What we have to do is to try and be a lot more aware of what's happening in the beginning. Because at the moment, if we leave it unchecked, it will come up and we'll get all of that rise of anger or that depression or other things. And what we're trying to do is to be a lot more self-aware and think, okay, this is okay. This is something which is happening because the body's trying to protect me. So understanding what's going on is really important. And people say if we're fully in charge of our life, only when we acknowledge all of those things going on deep in our soul and our mind. And some people even have the same type of feeling all the time. They get really anxious about certain things. It could be like Sonia when someone's separated. It could be someone saying that you've done bad at work or something like that. And being aware that this is a normal reaction is the first step to recovery and dealing with the stress. So we lay down those memories. We keep the ones associated with adrenaline, and they can be good or bad. Our brain will go around looking at everything internally, what people are thinking and the place. And as soon as there's a potential threat, a little red light goes on, we can actually sense that. And what we have to do is to try and be more sensitive to it and understand it. Childhood is a really important time when we establish these things. But even if there's been a really difficult childhood, we can still pick it up later. Before I go on, I want to just pick up those dangerous red flags. Now, all of these things here I'm about to show you are okay in a small amount. When they become an overriding problem, you've got a bit more of a problem of stress or even depression. So when you get chronic stress, you tend to lose interest in the things that you normally enjoy. You become more tearful more often. That is much more of a sign of depression. So if you're becoming quite tearful quite often, you do need to see someone. Feeling constantly on edge, anxious and irritable, that's the chronic stress problem. You're struggling with relationships because your body's telling you to push away because you don't trust people as much because your brain is in a chronic stress position. Everything becomes an effort and you find you're coping. That's because you're now taking away the energy from your frontal cortex, because that uses up a lot of energy, and putting it back into the body where the energy is needed for muscles, etc. So the frontal cortex, where the concentration goes, starts to wane, and you find it really hard to concentrate on things. You care less about your health, poor diet, that's because you're focusing on survival. So your diet will go wrong, your exercise will disappear because your hormones have changed. That's all normal. So all of these can be actually attributed to the body trying to protect itself. As we'll see, your weight actually can go up or down. And despite this, you spend a huge effort trying to say, I'm okay. That's how we work. We work by saying, I'm okay, don't worry. All these things are going on, but we try and hide it. And then there's always that tiredness, feeling as sleep is disrupted. Now, the definition of kind of feeling stressed is when a real or imagined threat exceeds our perceived ability to cope. So we think that something's about to happen and we won't be able to cope, and that creates stress. So notice I've underlined imagined and perceived. In other words, it's not always true. Sometimes we can cope with it quite easily, but our perception is that we can't cope with it. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take away that imagined threats. So yes, real threats we definitely have to deal with. Take away as many imagined threats as possible and take away as much perception that we actually can cope. And then we're tuning our belief system so we look through the lens of the world in a very different way. So we're not feeling that we're always going to be unable to cope. So let's have a look and see what's actually going on in the brain here. You've got the autonomic nervous system. Some of you will know. Hopefully most of you will have heard of it. The sympathetic is the fight and flight and cortisol and other things. The parasympathetic is the vagus nerve. And you have the ventral vagus and you have the dorsal vagus. Now, when there is that perception, that neuroception, that red flag has gone on, deep down the hypothalamus part of the brain, and don't forget the hippocampus was controlling a little bit of the hypothalamus, but the hypothalamus part of the brain turns a switch and does it in two ways. There's a fast way where nerve goes directly to the adrenal gland, which is above the kidney, and it releases adrenaline, noradrenaline from the adrenal medulla and cortisol. That's almost instant. You think you're about to fall. You think you're about to, someone's about to hit you in a car. You think someone, you know, there's something you see at night in the shadows. Immediately you get a surge of adrenaline. It's immediate. It's within seconds. And that will get you to feel really kind of alert. Your muscles are in action. You feel a bit sick. Your mouth goes dry. And your vision and your sensitivity of hearing goes up hugely. So that's a very quick part. The cortisol comes out as well, which draws sugar out into the blood to make you much more energetic, but that takes a bit more time. At the same time, you release some ACTH and other hormones from your pituitary gland, which is right underneath the hypothalamus, and that also produces more cortisol as well. So you've got two ways of doing these things. You've got the fast and the slow. There are also loads of other hormones that come out, and ones I just want to quickly talk about is ghrelin. Oxytocin is an interesting one. When you're under stress, although I was saying you often push people away, in the immediate thing, you hang on to people because we've learnt to connect to each other. But these are all these other aspects coming out. So it's not just the adrenaline and noradrenaline and cortisol. There are loads of others. It's called the neurosymphony response to stress. So I'm just going to pick up a few of them of what's going on when you become stressed. Cortisol and ghrelin are both stress hormones and they increase appetite. They're more abundant. And what we particularly love is fat and sugar. So when you're stressed, very often you find it really hard to resist eating the wrong things. That's normal. That's your body doing exactly as it's meant to. Unfortunately, of course, it also holds on to those calories because it doesn't want to let go of them because it wants to keep them for the energy. Therefore, you get obesity. So obesity is a direct response to chronic stress, and it's caused by cortisol and ghrelin coming out constantly all through the day under that chronic stress. Now, there is CRH, cortisol releasing hormone, that actually inhibits appetite, and that also comes out in some types of stress. And that can be why some people can put on weight and some people can actually have less appetite. But one of the biggest problems we've got is these big rises in stress that never drop down again. That's where the cortisol and ghrelin come in. Noradrenaline, adrenaline. Noradrenaline is a really nasty one, although it's brilliant for when you're defending yourself in a crisis under attack, and it makes you very angry and it makes you strong and it makes you a brilliant person to deal with the adversary. It also pulls your blood pressure up. It causes heart attacks. It takes your cholesterol. It creates atrial fibrillation. So it's got a huge number of negativity if it's there all the time and you're not using it for what it's designed to. It's only meant to rise very quickly and then go back down again. But of course, under chronic stress, it's there all the time. And adrenaline actually is not so bad, but it makes you feel rubbish. It puts your heart rate up, makes your breathing go. It makes that sense of anxiety and panic. So that's the adrenaline, although it doesn't actually do that much harm to you. It's noradrenaline and cortisol are the real danger ones. And what does cortisol do? Well, it's trying to get you as much energy as possible. So it's bringing glucose out of your liver and out of your muscle, and sorry, out of the liver into the bloodstream so that the muscles have got lots of energy. But what happens when you put lots of glucose into the bloodstream? You get diabetes. So diabetes is one of the direct causes, results of cortisol. It also lays down fat in your tummy. So that's why people who become very stressed tend to put fat in the wrong place. It goes in the tummy, in the visceral, rather than in the subcutaneous. It puts blood pressure up. It decreases libido, fertility, depression goes up. It actually damages the brain as well. So it reduces and possibly a relationship with Alzheimer's as well. So having cortisol constantly in your body under chronic stress creates many of the problems we're seeing today. So going back to this aspect, you've got the sympathetic producing adrenaline. What's the parasympathetic do? Well, in general, that's the good one. If you look at this, and this is a theory that was put forward about the two types of vagus nerve. So if you've got the parasympathetic, your heart slows down, you feel really good, you brilliant concentration, you're very welcoming to other people. If things start to go wrong, you go to the sympathetic, the fight and flight we've been talking about. If things go really bad and you can't run away from the problem and you can't fight it, you go into kind of freeze, where you collapse. That is where you start to get a breakdown. That's when you get burnout. Basically, your body shuts down, and that's one of the other parts of the dorsal vagus nerve. You feel and it's the body trying to say, I've got to conserve the energy as much as possible. So this is the pattern we want to avoid as much as possible. You will get little episodes of freeze. You get a phone call or a message and you suddenly drop your head because it's an overwhelming piece of news. What we're talking about in burnout is when we're doing that, and it can take months to get back to normal. So that's what we've got to really try and avoid. So when you've got the ventral vagus nerve in charge, oh my goodness, everything is brilliant. That's what we want to do. And that's what I'll just go through a little bit. The facial muscles change. You actually pick up high frequency as well. So you can hear people better, particularly in a crowded room. Whereas when you've got other things, you tend to find it's only the low ones you pick up. The voice has intonation, your heart rate is slower, your head is up, you breathe slower, your cells are repairing themselves, you're preparing everything. You are becoming a really healthy, welcoming, happy, content person where everything is going right. You want that as much as possible. The sympathetic, that's okay. We can do a little bit of sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight. As I said, a bit of stress is good. You can recover and get fine. But you do look differently when you're under sympathetic. Your muscles in your face will go into a scowl. You're protecting your eyes because you're putting your eyebrows down. You put your neck down to protect your neck, so your chin goes down a bit. You start to hear low frequency. So in a room, at a party, or if you're stressed, you might not hear people. You think your hearing is going, but actually it's because you're being tuned in to growls and lower frequencies, which are threats as a hunter-gatherer. The voice becomes flat. That's the best way of understanding if someone's under chronic stress. You'll find there's no intonation in their voice. It's become completely flat. Now, apologies to those of you, that's where that's normal, because some people do that. But if someone changes, that's one of the things to pick up. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing becomes fast and shallow, and it can be switched on in seconds. The overwhelming shutdown, and this is where we're really trying to avoid, is when you just feel helpless and shallow breathing, and everything in the body shuts down. Your concentration, your energy, your muscles, everything goes right down. And it's the body trying to recover and saying, I've had enough, I need to make a recovery. And that's what we call burnout, or other aspects of a breakdown, as it used to be called. So our autonomic nervous system doesn't really differentiate between real and perceived threats. So what we think is a perceived threat, it's not always, and we'll talk about that. You then release all these hormones. Some of them are okay in short bursts, others are quite dangerous, particularly when they're in longer period. And what we're trying to do is get as much of that ventral parasympathetic, ventral vagus nerve, that parasympathetic, as much as possible into our life, so that we can keep away those horrible feelings about chronic stress. So we've got to reprogram our stress system. If you go down to the beach, you'll often see little pathways of water coming down from the sand, and it makes these little tiny tracks as it goes down to the sea. And some of them will get deeper, and some of them, if you put your finger across and you break one of them, then the water has to take another route, and eventually that route becomes the main route, because the water takes a deeper and deeper gully, and the old route silts up and disappears. That's exactly what's happening in your brain. It's called neuroplasticity. And I give a talk in the resilience that even if you think differently, your brain will eventually shift to that way of thinking. So you have to force it to start with, but if you do force it, you'll find that your brain will start to shift and you will start thinking differently. This is particularly good when you feel helpless, or when you feel, oh, I'm hopeless, I can't do this, I can't do that. If you start to shift your mindset, you will then start to push that away, and you'll get a new gully that will form. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to create those new patterns. Your brain is constantly on the move. It's plastic, as they say. It can move. It doesn't, not plastic as in the kind of plastic, what we know as plastic, but plasticity means it varies, it changes, and we can make it change. That's what practice does when you're playing the piano or when you're doing a sport, but we can also do it by thinking. Now, sometimes we can see our negative thoughts like kind of storm clouds swirling around us, and we all see depression and disaster and awfulness around us, and we've all been in that horrible state. Some of you might be in that at the moment. But if you think about it, when those clouds do clear, and it can either be the way we look at things, or that kind of feeling has passed, we've not changed. The world hasn't changed. Nothing's really changed. It was all in our thoughts. It felt real enough to ourselves. But actually, if we look at it in a different way, those clouds are now below us, but the sun is still shining. The sky is still blue. When you're going in an aircraft and you look at that and you come down into the clouds, it's a very different world, but nothing's changed. Our core self hasn't changed. And what you have to remember is when you're going through this really difficult anxiety and worries, you're not actually changing yourself. It's purely your thoughts, perception that things are wrong. And we've got to shift our feeling to accept that these feelings are going to come through, because they do, and they're really unpleasant. But don't be despondent that you're a different person. Your core self hasn't changed at all. And there's two good books, I think. One of them on the left is a little bit techie, but How Emotions Are Made, and tells how you change your brain. And Eliminating Negative Thinking is a little bit more practical. But what they both say, what all of them say, is that when you get these feelings and clouds are wrapped around you, don't try and throw them away. Don't try and fight them. Don't try and take lots of drink or work harder and harder to ignore them, or start smoking or doing those other things. Just accept them, because they will always go away. Don't run away from them. That's your body trying to protect you. You may not like it, and it's a horrible feeling, but what you're trying to do is to say, yes, I've got that little red flag has been activated. Something's happened. My body's trying to protect me, but it's created lots of adrenaline and perhaps noradrenaline and cortisol. It's making me feel really panicky and horrible, but that's the body trying to help you. And you haven't changed. You're exactly the same. So let it pass. Let it pass through. Some people even on the book from Lisa Feldman Barrett, she says, call it a name sometimes, because we get the same thing when we get that kind of feeling of being kind of injustice, or we feel that we've been ignored, and we feel this real rising of either anger or sadness or whatever. And she says we all have that, but we just have to call it a name, let it pass. Oh gosh, here we go again. I've got the same feeling again. And then when it passes, you've actually overcome it. And very eventually, your brain will start to shift because it realizes it's no longer a threat. These things aren't anymore the threat that it thought it was. The perception has changed. And the more you do that, the more you'll create that new gully. And it will become less and less and less of an issue. Sometimes you need help from a counsellor, but often we can do it ourselves. So don't be scared of these negative feelings. They're all there, they pass, they're there to protect us. Try and face them, try and name them, don't fight them, don't push them away, don't waste your energy, don't go and start doing loads of damaging things to your body to try and kind of distract yourself. And very slowly, your brain will shift and you'll find you're dealing with that stress much better because you're much more self-aware. You now know what's going on in your body. It's all there trying to protect you. Not pleasant. Gosh, we've all been there. It's horrible. But it does go away and gets better. Now, you don't just push things, you don't just deal with that. You actually have to get your ventral vagus nerve on board as well. So you have to now not just deal with the kind of the sympathetic nervous system and all the anxiety and worries. You've got to start replacing it with positive things. And there's always glimpses, even in your worst day. And some of you might be having a bad day today or maybe a bad day yesterday. There'll be moments of real niceness. The coffee you drank may have been really nice. Someone said a nice thing to you at work. Someone, you saw something really lovely when you went for a quick walk. These are little tiny cues of ventral vagus nerve where you feel suddenly peaceful. You heard just now in Suffolk about people getting outdoors. That stimulates your ventral vagus nerve. And your ventral vagus nerve holds off. It's a buffer to the anxiety and stress. Now, we'll talk about that in the breathing and meditation and things like that. That's another way of doing it. But sometimes it can just be a little cue. You stop momentarily. Be aware of something, that nice smile from a shop assistant, that new music you've just listened to, sound of birdsong, feeling a sun on your face. What's this guy on about? What's he talking about with all this kind of nonsense there? Come on, he's a doctor. He should be doing proper stuff, No, this is proper stuff. This has actually been shown that every time we have these little bit of good things in our life, we don't just push them away because we're dealing with some really important financial stuff, which I know you are. Just hold it for a moment because that pushes your ventral vagus nerve into action and pushes away some of the stress. Otherwise, it's called a ventral anchor. Otherwise, you start drifting into the panic and anxiety and depression. Of course, if that carries on unchecked, you get to a breakdown or a burnout. So this is your anchor. This holds things in place and they build together and they join together. So by the end of the day, if you've had enough of these little glimpses, however awful the day was and everything went wrong, I bet you'll find a few of these little things that can just hold it. And when you're having a good day, make the most of it. Bank them. Bank all of these great things. Now, I used to be, I'm afraid, a little bit cynical about the breathing, but no longer. The evidence is extraordinary about how the way we breathe makes such a difference to building our ventral vagus nerve. And it's extraordinary. You don't have to, you can read that if you want, but basically what these researchers found was the thought was always that when you become anxious, your breathing goes up and the anxiety caused the increase of breathing. And that's true to an element. Adrenaline does make your breathing go up. But what they also found that it's the other way around. If you start breathing fast, your body thinks that there's anxiety, there's a threat there, so it makes your brain anxious. And when they knocked out those little cells, they found that the anxiety didn't come after breathing fast. So if you breathe slow, you kind of trick your brain to thinking that everything's okay. And those cells tell the brain, don't be anxious anymore. So slow breathing really does directly reduce anxiety. It stimulates the vagus nerve and it starts to slow the heart rate down. Now, there's a book called Breathe, which I think would be very much, if you're wanted to know about this, it's the title I love, The New Science of a Lost Art. It's been around for hundreds of thousands of years, really since mankind came onto this planet. We've been doing this slow breathing. All religions do it. You use the diaphragm and not the top, so you don't do the shallow breathing, you do the deeper. That increases the oxygen levels, and it also lowers cortisol levels, and it increases your mental functioning. You breathe through the nose, that increases oxygen again, and nitrous oxide, which increases blood flow. It also stimulates the hippocampus. You remember the hippocampus is really important in moderating our stress, and it reduces the amygdala, which is the fear bit. And you breathe slowly. Up for 3 seconds, hold for 4, out for 5. You can do that at work for about a minute or two. That's all you need to do. You may not have to do it, or you might want to do it at home. But if you're going through a bad time, you just do it very quietly. Don't have to make a big scene about it. Don't have to sit cross-legged and do it. You just do this as a way, and that will actually shift the brain into being much more of a less anxiety. And the Navy SEALs, the SAS, do it just before battle, just before they're about to face the enemy. They'll do this box breathing, as it's called, and it can be 4 seconds, or all 4 seconds. There are lots of variations of it, but they do it because it totally helps them focus on the battle that's about to take place. Make sure their frontal cortex, so there's no energy being wasted. So we want to see the world now through the kind of ventral vagus nerve as well. And this vagal brake prevents anxiety and stress from building and building. Now, some of you love adrenaline. You live off it. You go clubbing, you wake up, you go to bed about 2 in the morning, you're up again at 6 in the morning, you're going for work, you're doing brilliantly, you go for a run, you do this, you then, you're really hype, and everyone looks at you and think, God, what's this guy taking or this girl taking? This is when you're a kind of adrenaline junkie, as they call them, and that's fine. But without that vagal brake, I'm afraid there's an inevitable consequence. You will come off that bike of life. So we can't keep a very hyper, high work, high no sleep, pushing yourself all the time, because eventually you've got no more energy left and you go into that burnout. So the ventral brake is that constantly making sure that we slow ourselves down. So dealing with stress is not just alleviating symptoms, but strengthening your vagus nerve. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about one thing, because I know we were a little late, but I'm okay for just about 5 minutes. Is that okay? Little nod. Is that right? Fine. There's a very simple way sometimes of doing this practically. If you've got too many stressors, your coping is going to be overwhelmed and it will go up. So remove the stressors. Simple. How do you do that? Well, you divide them. There's some big stressors, medium and low, and they're ones you've got no control over, ones you've got partial control, and ones you've got full control. So let's have a look at this. You forgot to attend your father's birthday. Oh my goodness, there's a big rift in the family. How could you have forgotten? Completely, he's an elderly man. You were busy with all your work and children, and you forgot, and none of your siblings are going to forgive you for it. You feel awful about it. It's made you really stressed, but you've got no control. It's happened. You can mitigate it, deal with it, now push it away. Okay, you've done it. It's happened. Don't dwell on it all the time. Do all the things you're meant to do. Your sister's got ongoing poor health. You want to do as much, but you haven't got control over her health. You've got control over supporting her. So these important big things we keep dwelling on, and of course they're going to make us anxious, but what we just got to do is to remember that we can't do much about some of these ones. The ones, again, we've got full control. We've fallen out with our best friend. Well, let's patch up quickly. There's conflict about visiting family in Christmas with your partner. Well, just make a decision. Get that going. You keep forgetting to get your blood test. That's worrying you. Then get that appointment done. So those full control ones, don't just let them dwell around. Deal with them. The difficult ones are in the middle, where we've got some control. You feel a bad parent. You're not finishing your work. I've looked so tired. Focus on those ones and understand actually there's only a certain amount you can do. And actually the perception is, what is it that's a real problem here? Why is it? Is there something I can do to really help? So it's trying to get rid of a whole, and you need someone to sit down with you very often who is much harsher in dealing with some of these things and will be a help, because otherwise we build up all of these stresses and actually we don't need to. We can get rid of some. So take those stresses off, and suddenly the coping comes better. So dealing with a number of stresses, we tend to build, and some of us like to build them all up and like to have all these worries, but it actually doesn't do us much good. And then very quickly, I'm going to just talk about dealing with stress. And if you want another book, Toxic Stress, brilliant. That's about chronic stress, basically. And there are a whole lot of books by Harry Barry. It's a brilliant name. He's an Irish doctor. So Roger is 40, he's stressed, okay? He works in sales, 5 time zones. He responds to emails as soon as he gets up at 4 in the morning, and he goes to bed at midnight still talking on emails, and he's on his phone all the time. He feels wired, he can't cope. Things are going wrong at home. The activating event that changed this is because his annual target was shifted and it was increased, and he thinks he'll lose his job if he doesn't reach that target, and he's got a family and support and mortgage. So his belief is he's got to reach the target by doing these emails and working 19 hours a day. And if he fails to reach it, it's going to be a disaster. So his consequences are he's now distancing himself from everyone, and even himself, by doing this work. So what you have to do is now challenge. He must reach his targets. Well, he's trying to get control. He may not, he can talk to his boss about it, etc. But yes, of course, he wants to reach his target, but nothing's certain. And he's just saying there's no other solution. He also thinks if he doesn't reach target, he's going to lose his job. Well, that may not be true. That's in his perception. So again, that's another challenge. And he can't cope. Well, he can cope probably. But his irrational feeling is that he's got to work all these hours, and that's the only way he can deal with it, which means he's losing sleep, he's not healthy, his relationships are going wrong, he's feeling exhausted and headaches. And what we've got to do is challenge him on that and say, well, actually, yes, you do probably need to reach your targets, of course, but it's not going to be the end of the world if you talk to your boss about it. And certainly what you don't need to do is to be constantly on your phone, because that's not the answer. Yeah, it's taking away your concentration. You're becoming less and less efficient, and you're heading for burnout. So by challenging himself, by saying, actually, I don't need to do all of that work, you start to feel less tied to the targets. He has room in his life to enjoy things. He's exercising and eating better. He's pushing himself, and he's now creating time for himself. His beliefs and perceptions have been challenged, and he now sees there's an alternative way to reach his target, which doesn't involve having to take away his family and his own self, and he's enjoying life. Very briefly, gosh, that sounds so simple, doesn't it? It's not quite, unfortunately, that simple. Hopefully all of that has made sense. Going for that one. So building resilience, it's about protecting against chronic stress. Obviously, we've got to do our kind of lifestyle stuff. Our radar system is looking for things all the time, and we only, unfortunately, get the match with the bad things that are being laid down with adrenaline. Once that happens, we get our sympathetic nervous system starts to send out horrible feelings of anxiety. But if we understand that and we have that neuroception, then we can start to head it off a little bit, and we accept some of these symptoms, as unpleasant as they are. We haven't changed. They're always going to pass away. Dealing with stress isn't just the sympathetic, it's trying to put the parasympathetic, the ventral vagus nerve, so there's a little ventral anchor, the vagal anchor. Then we can actually start to deal with some of the stresses around us, and obviously our lifestyles and perceptions. Don't forget, stress is a perceived ability that will be overcome by something, and we won't be able to cope. It's a perception often more than a reality. There's a lot there. I hope that's okay. I have been told we've got to do that little QR code. If you do mind doing that, that'd be brilliant. But thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, William. That's really helpful to start with the science and then go on to your summary. I think there's lots of kind comments in the chat, if you wouldn't mind having a look. There are a few questions, but I'm afraid we don't have time to answer them just now. So I'm going to ask if anybody's got any questions, if you wouldn't mind popping them into the chat. And William, if you've got any time over the next session,
Absolutely.
if you are able to answer them, that'd be really lovely. Thank you.
I will do that. Yeah, just throw them in there, and then I'll I'll answer them along the way, and I'll be looking forward to the next session anyway, because it's going to be about resilience, which is exactly
Yes, absolutely.
how it fits in together.
Well planned, obviously. So thank you very much. That was a great session. We are now moving on to our last session before our brief lunch break. This is around building resilience. So welcome Skye Dean and Alex Webb from Resilient Leader Consultants. We're going to have quite an interactive session next. So if you wouldn't mind popping your cameras on, we will be going into breakout rooms, and full engagement is really helpful if you don't mind. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And Dr. Bird, thank you very much for that. We caught the last 15 minutes of that. And I think, as you said, this steps in really nicely to what we're going to share now in this next hour. The session is all about building resilience, a buzzword at the moment. It's about taking action for your own behaviours, about reminding you and highlighting what you're in control of. So brilliant tee up there. Thank you, Dr. Bird. And some of the top tips that we feel you can help wherever you are. Now, we're very conscious it's the slot before lunch, so hopefully this hour is a focus for you and not your hungry belly. So please do stay with us and join in where you can. Just a brief introduction about us and how it's so lovely to see some familiar faces in the room and some familiar names. You're back for more tips and strategies from us, which is great to see. Both Alex and I are Resilient Leaders Consultants. We both have very different backgrounds. We run our own independent businesses, as well as co-founding Resilient Women Leaders. But we found ourselves working together almost 5 years ago now, due to our passion for supporting individuals to overcome barriers that they face in reaching their full potential, to build resilience and leadership muscle, and ultimately empowering both individuals and their teams to thrive and not merely survive. So to make the most of this hour, this precious hour, we know you're all really busy, grab a notebook, your OneNotes, you'll have a document open to write things down. As mentioned in the agenda, this will be an interactive session. So we are assuming you will all, when you go into your breakout rooms, have your cameras off, have your microphones off, and you will be interacting with each other in those breakout rooms. So remove distractions as best you can. The session will fly by, and just trust the process. When you go into breakout rooms, you will want to note down some things. Be curious about the people in the room with you, interact with them, ask questions. There will be some aha moments of that, we have no doubt, even in a short period of time that we've got today. So listen with curiosity, and then you can refer back to those notes yourself or from listening to others after the session. So we always start with a quote, and as mentioned, we are Resilient Leaders Consultants and leadership coaches. We refer to the word leader a lot. Now, when you see the term leader, we're talking about you. Don't be put off if you don't see yourself as a traditional leadership or hierarchical role. We see you. We believe that everyone is a leader because everyone influences someone. Be that as a friend, a peer, a colleague, a family member, the list is endless. But many of you are there for others, and we have to look after ourselves in order to be there for others and support others and lead others well. So we believe that you are all leaders, and we see you, and we believe that everyone can be a resilient leader when they are confident in who they are and what they do. So a brief intro. Alex, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to go into our first exercise.
Amazing. Thank you, Skye, and good afternoon, everybody. Right, let's get you into your first exercise, and it's focusing on who you are at your best. And it sounds like in Dr. Bird's session, you've started to look at some of that as well. So in this first breakout room, we want you to think of a time when you would describe yourself at your best. Now, this could be inside and outside of work. So where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? What's the environment like? What tasks or activities are you involved in, and what challenges are you facing? So the aim is just to write down some keywords, and then you're going to get an opportunity to share this in your group. You're going to be in groups of about 3 or 4 people, and while you're in there are going to be times when some people love to share quite quickly. Others like to have a bit more thinking time. So be aware of that. So invite those people in. If you know that you're talking a little bit too much, please do invite those people in. And that's how you'll get the best out of the sessions. Now, while I'm just giving you the final bits before we send you in, just take a screenshot of the exercise, and Skye's also popping that into the chat for you. As Skye mentioned, these sessions fly by. The breakouts will go fast. You've only got 10 minutes, but it's really important to stick to the exercise and use the exercise to get to know each other. Keep that eye on the time. You don't need to introduce yourselves. You know, you're going to get to know each other. We promise. And so just trust the process. Skye and I are also going to be popping in to listen. We'll have our cameras off and we'll be muted. You don't need to acknowledge us. We're basically earwigging into your conversation so that we can start to share a couple of good nuggets when we come back and have a debrief. But if we are in there and you have a question, please ask us and we'll come off mute and our cameras as well. So let's head you into breakout rooms and we'll see you when you come back.
Well, I'll open them now.
Thanks. Back in the room. Thank you very much.
Oh wow, that was great.
Having a go at that. If you want to pop yourselves on mute, if you know that there's background noise, then please do. But Skye, I'm just going to come over to you. What did you hear in that quick session?
Yeah, some really interesting conversations, Alex. And for some, it was like, I've never been asked who I am at my best. So just that initial question was sort of caught people off guard, really. But once they kind of softened and got into it and we're sharing with each other, and there was some great questions happening, some real curiosity. People were talking about feeling organized. When I have a plan, when I feel like I'm in control, they were a couple of things that came up quite frequently. When I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling relaxed, I feel like I've had sleep. Also, there was a theme around environment, that actually the importance of an environment around us can really help us be or hinder us at being at our best. So people mentioned about having the right support around us, or those people that I need around me to help me be at my best rather than others that might be hindering me. And someone said at the end that being at my best enables me to look for my wins. So if I'm not feeling at my best, one of the things is looking for the wins at the end of that day was something that enabled them to be at their best again. So really interesting.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And I heard similar types of things going on there as well. But in terms of, you know, some of you are, you know, you're at your best when your head's in a spreadsheet, or you're problem solving, or you have that clarity. One of the rooms I went into, they were just talking about running and seeing the sunset. You know, just the environment that you're in can be really helpful. So just by reminding yourself of who you are at your best, you become more aware of how often you're in this state. You know, what's stopping you getting there? You know, now you have a visual, hopefully you've got a visual of who you are and what best looks like and feels like as well. So you've got something to aim for. So what's in your control, going back to what Dr. Bird was saying, what's in your control so that you can be that person more often? Skye, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So we're now going to share with you some of the things that you can think about and what is the kind of background to us as Resilient Leaders consultants. I mentioned earlier that we believe that everyone can be a resilient leader when they're confident in who they are and what they do. But part of this is knowing what takes us from pressure to stress. Where do we do our best work on this spectrum? Is it times of calm and equilibrium? Some of you were saying in the breakout room, when I don't have time pressured, then that's helping me be at my best when I'm feeling calm in a routine. Is it in uncertainty, or do you thrive in times of chaos and crisis? Now, a question we usually ask that if you do love that crisis and chaos end, how long can you stay up there? But it's thinking as a resilient leader and having an awareness of what happens when you're moving up and down, left and right on this uncertainty spectrum. What takes us or triggers us into increased pressure or stress? And more importantly, how do we then come back down? Now, as Resilient Leaders consultants, we talk lots about knowing where we are at any given moment on this spectrum, providing us with the opportunity to be aware, to acknowledge where we're at and take action. And how do we then get back there or get other people back down as well? So I want to introduce you, this is based on research by Zubin and Spring back in the 1970s. And the research allows us to then think about what happens or what does it look like when we're faced with challenging events. And also, depending on how much resilience we have, will enable us to think about how we respond to those challenging events. So are we coping? Are we able to manage a variety of different things depending on what's in front of us? My screen's just taking a while to load up, bear with me. There we go. Are we able to, cope with everything that's thrown our way? Are we feeling competent and able to do a really good job? Importantly, are we able to switch off? A number of you said on holiday you're able to switch off and be at your best. I actually find it quite difficult sometimes to switch off. And then are we feeling quite bored in this zone? We then start to think about pressure. Now, pressure under high performance, that's actually where we do our best work. Some of us get a real adrenaline off it. We are able to have the real high sensations, and we really enjoy being in that moment. So actually feeling pressured and stretched enables us to be doing a really great job and performing at our high performance. And it's a healthy state. And bearing in mind that pressure can come from within, but also externally as well, from others or the environment in which you're in. We then think about overwhelm. So actually, is the level of demand on us beyond that which we're able to cope with? That actually we've lost that ability to prioritize one action off the other. And you may have lost sight of why you're doing something. Again, being at your best. Some of you are saying that clarity is really important. So staying in that state of overwhelm isn't feasible. It's not long term. And actually, we need strategies to help us cope and bring us back down. And then finally, the last one on this slide is burnout, where the demands on you have been kept for so high. As Dr. Bird was saying, we can move into that burnout, we can move into that overwhelm. We've just, lost all grasp on reality, that we're not able to trust ourselves, and that actually at this point, we might need to seek professional help to help us come back down if we've tried some of those strategies that Dr. Bird has alluded to earlier. So we find this a great tool to do a pulse check. So we call it a pulse check. You can do it on a day-to-day basis. You can do it on an hourly basis if you want to. Just check in with yourself, have a pause, and think about where you are at any given moment. So we'd like you to grab your phones and just use this QR code to do a pulse check right now. Now, this can be used for personal or professional, but this is a work conference. So let's check in and do a pulse check in regards to your work. How are you feeling in relation to your work right now? Are you coping? Are you feeling pressured? Are you feeling a bit overwhelmed or leading into burnout? Now, it's all anonymous, and it's an opportunity for you to be honest and open with yourself. So grab your phones, scan that QR code, and click on the one area that you think that you're sitting in at the moment: coping, pressured, overwhelm, or burnout. And I'll hand over to Alex to share the results.
Thanks, Skye. Yeah, I'm just trying to upload at the moment. This is where tech gets in the way. Here we go.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for sharing that. So you can see the spread of those on the call and the percentages of where you are. I want to give a big hug to that someone up in that burnout unwell. Use some of those things that Dr. Bird was saying through, and hopefully some of the things that we'll share with you now will help you look and establish and have awareness of why you might be feeling like that. So as a group of people in your industries right now, feeling quite pressured and overwhelmed at this time, and then there's 34% of you feeling that you're coping at the moment. Okay, thank you for sharing, Alex. If you can move on the screen.
I think you may need to take over, Skye, because my slides are not playing.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so share my screen again. Okay, so now you know who you are at your best, and you've pulse checked where you are at this moment in time. We're wanting to think about how we devise ways to manage those events and increase our resilience and leadership. And this stems back to thinking about this. You have a responsibility to acknowledge where you're at and then take action to improve your what you can control. So if you always do what you always did, then you'll always get what you always got. So what change are you in control of so you can do something different? Alex.
Brilliant. And that leads us really nicely into our next exercise. So we want you to think now about what energizes you. So distinguishing and acknowledging what energizes and de-energizes you, this can be a light bulb moment for some. So the next exercise is about understanding, where are you spending most of your time? We want you to make a list of things that give you energy. Now, you've already thought about who you are at your best, and you've just listened to Dr. Bird as well. So some of these things will appear here too. Think about home and work. For me, it's around people sharing and collaborating. For others, it may be, problem solving or working with numbers may energize you. Having your head in an Excel spreadsheet, I am known for that, or supporting and developing others. You will all be different. Think of the things you may do in your day-to-day that energize you and also de-energize you. Maybe it's the commute, the washing up, the doom scrolling on your phone. Think of the things that you may do. Those things in your day-to-day could be adding or taking away some of that energy. So once you have your list, what we want you to do now is share your top 3 on each list, so energize and de-energize. And then we want you to make a commitment. We want you to pick one of the things, once you've listened to everybody, pick one of those things that you're going to commit to doing more of, and one thing you're going to do less of. And then we'll ask you to share these in the commitments in the chat on your return. So take a screenshot, Skye popping it in the chat, and we'll see you when you come back. So Natasha, if you could pop them back into the same breakout rooms, that would be fantastic. So Skye, coming back straight to you then, what did you hear?
Some really interesting things, from going from walks, doing crafts. There was a real sense of themes around getting your head or your kind of teeth stuck into something, around, almost a refocus around out of other stuff going on in life, just having a hobby to really kind of get your teeth stuck into. A sensory safari. Someone was saying just being out in nature, smelling, seeing, hearing nature in all its glory, really energize others. There was a sense around helping people, supporting others, whether or not you know them or not. Just really helping others brings a lot of energy to others. It was also around building. So we had Lego, we had Meccano, we had all sorts of doing sort of dexterous things, and again a bit of a common theme around getting stuck into a project that could just distract and take away. So yeah, some of the real energizers there. And finally, in this last breakout room, they talked about the ability to let go. Whilst that initially it's hard, actually by letting go really allowed the weight off shoulders and re-energized individuals. So that was fascinating.
Brilliant. And I loved how I heard so much more about what energizes rather than de-energizes, which is great. So already we're coming with that positive mind, which is what, again, Dr. Bird was talking about. Is, if we can be channeling those energizing things. So things I heard was, again, pausing, stopping, being able to kind of take the breath. We've just been taught today about our box breathing. That really does help. Just being involved in activity, team sports and things like that. We had quite a lot of that, which was great to hear. Sewing, I heard, horse riding, reading, all those things energize you. Meditation came up as well. And someone talked about one thing that de-energizes them was their need for control. And actually, if they can stop and looking at their need for control and just allow things to kind of happen and trust and give that autonomy, then that's quite helpful. Another conversation about washing up. And actually, when you wash up, yes, it is a chore, but it could be de-energizing. So if you have a different mindset, feel the soap suds, feel the warmth, listen to a podcast or radio program, that kind of changes that into, oh, this is a little bit of me time. This could be energizing. So I really kind of enjoyed that. And some we've had in past programs that we've run. I just want to mention a couple of books that have come out, definitely around sleep If any of you have heard of Dr. Matt Walker, he seems to be sort of the guru on sleep and the importance of a good night's sleep as well, because if you are well rested, you know, your day feels entirely different. That sleep, nourishment, hydrating your body as well. People also talked about protecting the weekends, you know, doing the little stuff that energizes you in the weekend. Then you start the week with that higher level of energy. Calm app, insight timer, pranic healing we talked about. The Calm app helps you with that medication. And I know there was a book about the joy. I think it was talking about, you know, medication for those who kind of don't believe. So check them out. Meditation doesn't have to be half an hour. It can just be, you know, the deep breath. That's meditation, and that can be for 10 seconds. So use those pause moments as well. And I think for me, as a mix, I'm a mix between an extrovert and an introvert. So parties sometimes can drain me. So connecting with people, I need to manage that. So I love it in the moment, but afterwards I could get quite exhausted. So think about what is energizing you, because I know that now. So I make sure I put white space in my diary where I can, so that I'm not filling my time all the time, which is what I used to do. So now you know a little bit more about how you can add that energy. Again, you're in control of those bits. And if we go to where Skye started with the earlier, about highlighting that we can build our own resilience by devising ways of managing those events. So knowing what energizes and de-energizes us can be one way, I suppose, to support us in choosing wisely, especially when we have spare time, or to make our busy times work better for us. So discover ways to help us cope and thrive will improve that levels of resilience. So helping us stay in that green and yellow part a little bit more, rather than staying in our orange and the higher end. Skye.
Thank you, Alex. I was just saying to Natasha that because the timings were shifted, and I'm conscious that you all want to get back to lunch, we're not going to go into a breakout room for this activity, but I'm just going to talk you through it, and it will give you an opportunity to reflect after this session today. To finish us today, moving into this final exercise, I want you to think about your values, and this great quote by Elvis Presley: "Values are like your fingerprints. Nobody's are the same, but you leave them all over everything that you do." Knowing your values can help you make better decisions. It can support you to feel confident and stand by your ethics. They can also help you understand why you might be feeling a certain way. Again, having an awareness, acknowledging it, provides you the space and opportunity to take action to do something about it. So our question to you, and we're going to just do this we're not going to go into breakout rooms, but you're going to go through this exercise before we finish, is thinking about, what are your values? Your values are those things that are deep within you, and they define who you are and what you do in your life. Now, fundamentally, a value is probably something that you did when you were 8, when you were at your most free and energized and fulfilled, but it makes it exciting and everything a little less frightening. So the exercise that Alex is going to put in the chat, you can take away now rather than us going into breakout rooms. We've popped the PDF into the chat for you. You're going to work through it and thinking about what's most important to you. And in that exercise, it gets you to think about, of those ones that you select, removing the things that you feel you need. Okay. Because those things, if you need it to be happy, then usually it's a need, not a value. So make sure you get those needs met, as unmet needs can slow us down and drain energy from us. Also remove any of the shoulds or the should nots, because if you're feeling like that, you feel like you should be doing something, it's probably been defined by someone else. So an upbringing or a family member or some friends, you feel you should be doing something. Again, that's not a value. So really try and narrow it down in that process, and through the course of what would be this exercise, we identify and try and get you down to 3. So you're going to have time after the session, tomorrow or this week or maybe this evening, go through that exercise and really identify your values and think about what happened when you started to let go of some of those values. How did you make the choice of getting to those top 3? Look at the top 3 that are left and think about, what is the relationship between them? What do they say about you and who you are and what you do? Because that can bring confidence. It can help you guide yourself through uncertainty or change on that kind of pulse check of uncertainty spectrum when you start to have to make decisions and go from there. So we're not going to go into breakout rooms. Here are the values if you want to take a screenshot. But as I said, Alex has popped it into the chat for you.
The PDF won't upload. Unfortunately, we don't have that. We're not allowed to upload a PDF. So please do take a screenshot, and we can send you the PDF in a post email.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. That it was a last minute addition because we're running over. But yeah, take a screenshot of this, but we'll send it to Natasha as well to do for you. We started with a quote and we end with a quote. Today has all been about building resilience through Dr. Bird's session and through this session, about giving you tools to help you focus on yourself for an hour around the craziness of life and the juggles that you all have in your world. Today it's provided you an hour to stop, to pause, to reset, to remember who you are at your best. Think about what energizes and de-energizes. Have that awareness, acknowledge where you are and take action to then top up that cup so you can maintain the pressure and reduce that overwhelm. Leading into your values, they're unique to you. Everyone is different. Get to know the people in your teams so you can support each other in knowing who they are at their best, what they need, what energizes them, and how we can support each other. There was a theme around environment. And this quote really sums it up brilliantly. And it's from a kids' film. It's one of my kids' favorite films. And it also really helped me at a time when I was going through a real hard time a few years ago. But I needed to see this. I needed to hear this. And maybe this resonates with you. Your mind is like this water, my friend. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer becomes clearer. Alex, back to you.
Fantastic. So this is just an opportunity now to to bring this session to a close, I suppose. If you enjoy spending, I think we've just spent 40 minutes on you, learning from others. We'd love to invite you to join our next Open Renew You programme, which we run 3 times a year. It's the same format as you've experienced today. You'll do similar exercises. The exercises we've done today have been taken from that programme. So our next one starts on the 25th of Feb. It's a Tuesday evening. It runs for 5 weeks. And we use the Japanese concept of ikigai, that the reason for being, and it sort of guides us through our 5 weeks, helping you discover your purpose in life. And we always talk about it helping you feel refocused, re-energized and renewed. So do follow the QR code there if you want to know more. There is a 10% discount for NHS 2025. Please use that when you check out. This is just an opportunity to remind yourself of, if you focus in on you then become the best version of yourself. So you are positively going to impact, and it removes some of those stresses. Again, Dr. Burr was talking about how can we take control of removing some of those stresses by understanding how we work, what we believe, what we hold close and dear, makes us understand how we can release some of those things that de-energize us, that are out of our control. So we'd love for you to join us, and please find us also on our website, Resilient Women Leaders. And yes, we do support women leaders, but our Renew You programme is both for men and for women. So please do come and join us. And I think Skye's going to pop that link into the chat as well. So it's lunchtime. We promised we'd get you there on time, with also a chance to ask any questions if you would like. So Natasha, I'll probably hand it back to you to open up the floor, or if there's any questions that you'd like to bring to us.
Thank you so much, Skye and Alex. That was a really, really great talk. It's really nice to be able to go off into the rooms and chat to other participants on the programme and be able to distill down those values and the positives. Any questions from anybody? We've got a couple of minutes. If not, we're heading to a longer lunch break than planned. Last chance for any questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for giving up your time. Thank you to everybody for participating in that session. We are due back at 1:15 1, there's one more session. It's half an hour on breathing and relaxation. So thank you to all of our speakers this morning. Thank you to everybody who's come to listen in, and hopefully we'll see you back at 1:15.